Number 10. Cordyceps Jones. Cordyceps Jones is one of my favorites of the cosmic villains mentioned on this list. He is definitely a super weirdo. Basically a mushroomy looking space mobster who is made up of fungal spores. While he might sound ridiculous, he is not a villain that you want to underestimate, trust me. He both looks and is terrifying. Most recently using one of his casinos to threaten the existence of the entire planet of Earth by creating a betting pool based around its destruction. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that like? Number 9. The Brood. Despite being a bunch of insectoid alien critters, the Brood are actually among one of the most normal of the weirdos on our list. They kinda resemble the monstrous species we see in Alien, and likewise they are usually known for bursting through people's stomachs. The Brood also seek out hosts to incubate their young, which then of course burst out of the host's bodies to be born. Pretty much just like we see happen in Alien. Something interesting and bizarre that we know about the Brood too is that they don't just do this for survival's sake because, you know, it's required for them to continue to exist as a species. They actually enjoy terrorizing others throughout the cosmos. Inflicting pain and causing panic is something pretty much all Brood enjoy, giving them actual gratification from the violent acts that they commit. In fact, in their race, it's actually weird to feel a sense of empathy or compassion for others and to not enjoy pain, which is why Brew was ostracized and left to die by the Brood Queen, before he was then found and taken in by the X-Men. And weirdly, in his case, the ability to be friendly and kind is actually like his mutant power as a Brood, because, I mean, that is a mutation. Number 8. The Phalanx. Phalanx are some of the most freaky of the villainous cosmic alien races we have over at Marvel Comics. They are believed to have been created by the Technarchy, but I don't think they have actually been made aware of this connection, probably because the Technarchy doesn't want them to know that. Like the Borg, who likely inspired them, they are a cybernetic race focused on assimilating other worlds. They don't take you to a cube to experiment on you though, but instead infect you with the techno-organic virus, which then slowly changes you into a cyborg, erasing everything within you that is organic and turning you techno-organic, some might say. Number 7. Dark Celestials. So weird. Because when you think about it, the Celestials and even the Dark Celestials actually are a big part of the reason that we even have life on Earth in Marvel Comics. In fact, their existence could even be used to explain the sheer number of superpowered beings that are on Earth as well. The Progenitor, who appeared in AXE Judgment Day after being resurrected by the Avengers and Eternals, is actually the first to have become corrupted. Dark Celestials are just Celestials, godlike cosmic beings, who are corrupted by the Horde. The Progenitor did initially not turn dark, but instead died as a result of this, falling to planet Earth billions of years ago. The Celestial who searched for the Progenitor became corrupted by the corpse they found, and then they were turned dark, thereby creating the Dark Celestials, and actually becoming the first Dark Celestial, but not the first person to be infected by the Horde.
Number 6. Fearmaster. Daryl King was a board member of the dictatorial Alchemex Corporation in charge of the private police force known as Public Eye Unlimited. At the same time, he was also secretly leading the criminal cartel known as Cyber Nostra, proving that even in the future you need 2 jobs to make a decent living. Daryl used his unique position to play both sides and enrich himself while avoiding detection, going under the alias Fearmaster for his criminal activities. He was given a mutated hand by an alien entity called Kelmizadek, which let him calcify or turn people's flesh into minerals such as gold, stone, and everything in between. It also let him de-age people. He called this power the Midas Touch, and used it to create a display room called the Endymion Room, where he kept the altered dead bodies of all the women he had touched and transformed over the years. He was one of the main antagonists for the 2099 Punisher, although he mostly fought the Punisher with his connections and by sending hired assassins after him rather than directly confronting him. Even so, he is a powerful villain both due to his political power and his superpowers. Number 5. Goblin. The 2099 version of Spider-Man has 2099 versions of several of the original Spidey's enemies, such as this version of the Green Goblin, simply known as Goblin. The Goblin is really a Catholic priest, Father Jennifer D'Angelo. Her goblin suit was the source of her powers, which allowed her to fly with giant purple wings and shoot energy blasts at her enemies instead of pumpkin bombs. arms. The suit also granted her super strength and was capable of projecting hallucinations, an ability she used to trick Spider-Man into attacking civilians that she had made look like her. Her goal is to replace Spider-Man as the defender of downtown Nueva York, as she believes that Spider-Man is a corporate tool, but her methods and willingness to team up with criminals like the 2099 Vulture earn her a spot on this list of villains. Number 4. Flipside. During the heroic age, an android called Flipside was created and programmed to emulate the powers of whatever superhero it first came across. It was eventually found by a band of thieves who believed the robot was broken. It was actually still in scanning mode, trying to find a hero that matched its records. When Flipside encountered the Spider-Man of 2099, he scanned him but had trouble recognizing him, as he clearly was not the original Spider-Man he had on file. In order to complete its objective, the android combined the templates it had on file of the original Spider-Man and the original Venom to create its personality and power set. He came to life and jumped into Spider-Man's arms, declaring himself to be Spidey's new best friend. The merged personalities caused him to become psychotic, telling Spider-Man, "I'm gonna be your bestest friend for the rest of your whole life if that's okay with you, and if not, well fine, then I'll kill ya." When Spider-Man rejected him, Flipside began using his powers to kill all the nearby scavengers, seeming to shrug off their bullets. Spider-Man managed to defeat him, but once he left, Flipside merely reassembled himself and kept killing the scavengers. Number 3. Electro 2099. This version of Electro is actually an android who was designed to be a construction worker. Unfortunately, his masters were not satisfied with his work, and much like the bosses here at Top 10 Nerd do when they aren't pleased with our performances, the android was sold to torture experimenters. No, really. Haven't you ever wondered what happened to all the other hosts this channel has had? Only Amanda has a fan base big enough to keep her safe. Torture experimenters were people who used robots to test the effectiveness of the various torture methods they were developing in the dystopian nightmare that is Marvel's 2099. When the android was being tortured with electricity, however, the overload fried his obedience chip, making him self-aware and able to rebel against his masters. A generator accident gave him electric powers such as electrokinesis, energy absorption, and flight, and he took on the identity of Electro, joining the new version of the Sinister Six in order to take on the Spider-Man of 2099. Number 2. Venom 2099. Kron Stone is actually the half-brother of the 2099 Spider-Man, Miguel O'Hara. He is a ruthless psychopath who gets a perverse thrill from hurting other people. He was a mercenary working with the infamous Skin Posse until he was seemingly killed in battle and dumped in the sewer. It turned out that when he entered the water, he was not quite dead, and he floated through the sewer system until, by total coincidence, he came across the Venom symbiote that had caused Peter Parker all those troubles years ago. The symbiote had been hiding for years, maturing, but once it bonded with Kron, it transformed him into the new Venom. He possesses all of the original Venom's powers, such as super strength, agility, web slinging, and the like, but as the symbiote has had more time to mature, it has also developed more powers that this Venom can take advantage of. The new Venom has acidic blood and saliva, not unlike the xenomorphs featured in the Alien series. He devoted himself to destroying the new Spider-Man's life by trying to kill him and his loved ones, even managing to fridge Spidey's love interest, Dana. Spider-Man soon discovered Venom's weakness to sonics and used the citywide intercom system to defeat and capture his estranged brother. Number 1. Brimstone Love. In the 2099 timeline, one of the most twisted and evil sources of entertainment is the Theater of Pain. They used human misery as the main attraction, putting on sadistic displays for the crowd. Their leader is perhaps the most evil and ruthless of them all, Brimstone Love. He claims that he draws his power from the molten core of the earth, and he channels it into his powerful pyrokinesis. He used this ability to easily burn through the steel walls of the 2099 X-Men's headquarters and fight the mutant Skullfire. While Skullfire was able to draw his power from nearby energy sources, he soon exhausted all the nearby energy and was soon defeated by Brimstone, who has no limit to how much fire he can cast due to his source of power being the earth itself. In addition to his pyrokinesis, Brimstone Love also has super strength and durability and teleportation powers, which allowed him to hold his own in a fight against the entire X-Men team, only being defeated once one of his own team turned against him and used the Theater of Pain's telepathic technology against him in X-Men 2099 issue 25. Number 10. Venture. First up, we have this cyborg from the future. We first met Venture when he was going by the name Queeg and living in the ruins of Nueva York. Other post-apocalyptic people who talk about him say that he is one of the greatest hunters hunters in the world in his time. He's not technically from the 2099 timeline, otherwise known as Earth 928, but is actually from an alternate possible future timeline that has been designated Earth 15,329. This timeline was created when Miguel O'Hara became trapped in our present day and couldn't get back to his version of the future. Miguel was able to create a portal that would let him travel to the future for 10 minutes at a time, but Queeg found out about this and set up camp in the future, waiting for the portal to open so he could go to our present day. And yes, I know how convoluted this sounds. This is why I generally don't like when Marvel tries to do time travel stories. When Queeg got to present day New York, Miguel recognized him as a villain from the future called Venture. Having not yet experienced this, Queeg was confused, but eventually decided that he liked the name so much that he adopted it, making Spider-Man kinda responsible for naming the villain through some weird time travel paradox. Venture is a gifted hunter and strategist whose cybernetic enhancements grant him increased strength and allow him to keep up with and go toe-to-toe with Spider-Man and the 2099 version of Captain America. He has had 5 appearances in the 2099 comics and therefore hasn't gotten the chance to show how capable he really is, but perhaps he can earn a higher spot in our future, which would of course be his past. Number 9. Vulture 2099. In the 2099 story, New York kept expanding and eventually ran out of room, so they began building upwards instead. The more wealthy citizens got to stay in the new upper city while the poor and downtrodden were left in the old undercity. In order to survive, they formed various gangs, or cliques as they refer to them as. Some of these cliques are the Throwbacks, the Scavs, the Trumps, and the Thorities. The largest of these groups are called the Freakers, and they are led by the 2099 version of the Vulture. Like the original Vulture, this guy uses a winged flight suit in order to take to the skies and attack his enemies. He doesn't seem to have the intelligence of the original Adrian Toomes, so it is unlikely that he developed the wingsuit himself, but however he attained it, he makes good use of it. Unlike the original Vulture, his wings are sharpened to a razor-sharp point, allowing him to swoop down and instantly behead his enemies. He first appeared in Spider-Man 2099 Volume 1 Issue 6, where he rescued Spider-Man from the futuristic private police force known as Public Eye in hopes that Spider-Man would help him destroy the evil Alchemex Corporation so he could have control of the skies. Any inclination Spider-Man had to help the Vulture with his goals was quickly destroyed when he discovered that the Vulture had been cooking and eating the bodies of his fallen foes. As he said in his second appearance in Spider-Man 2099 Issue 7, "Oh come on, Spider-Man, didn't you ever hear of finger foods?" Number 8. Jigsaw 2099. Originally known as Multifractor, this villain was a Gravball player, whatever the hell that means, who made a turn to crime as an enforcer for the Cyber Nostra group. He was an experienced combatant who was able to effectively stand up to the 2099 version of the Punisher before eventually being killed by the futuristic anti-hero. His body was found by a mortician who had made a really bizarre career pivot into being a veterinarian. For some reason, this made him capable of bringing Multifractor back from the dead. He replaced one of the villain's arms with that of a gorilla and the other with a robotic one sporting a massive razor-sharp hook. He also seems to have giant goat legs for some reason. Despite being able to bring a dead guy back to life, the vet was unable to make the end result cosmetically pleasing, but Multifractor actually really dug his new look. He went after the Punisher again, but had adopted the name Jigsaw due to his stitched-together appearance. He was a formidable foe for Punisher, but was eventually defeated and found by a gang who he took control of and led until ceding leadership to his old boss, the Fearmaster, but more on him later. Number 7. Tiger Wild. One night in the country of Latveria in the year 2099, a portal opened, spitting out a man dressed as the long-disappeared ruler of Latveria, Victor Von Doom. Despite the fact that the man under the mask was far too young to be the real Doom, he somehow had all the original's powers and memories. He set about reclaiming his throne as he soon discovered that the country was under the control of a dictator named Tiger Wild. Tiger had been a high-level executive for the evil Alchemex Corporation before leaving the company and taking over Latveria. Although he had saved the nation from being taken over by the corporate forces that had seized control of many of the planet's other nations, he now ruled the nation with an iron fist, squashing any who dared oppose his rule. Doom used his power armor to cut through Tiger's security to get to the new Latverian ruler. He confronted him, but was shocked when Tiger turned out to be a cyborg with enhanced strength and the ability to redirect the energy in Doom's suit to overload him and take him out of commission. He removed Doom's mask, seeing that this man who seemed to have all of Doom's memories was not disfigured. He took the opportunity to make the new Doom more historically accurate before having him sent away. It was only through the help of Wilde's tarot reader, Fortune, that Doom was able to survive, upgrade his equipment, and eventually overthrow Wilde. There are other 2099 villains more powerful than Tiger Wilde, but the fact that he was able to take over a country and defeat Dr. Doom in combat makes him worth mentioning. By the way, Doom isn't on this list as he doesn't really do anything too villainous in the 2099 timeline.
Number 6, the Phoenix Force. Now it's important to say the Phoenix Force is not a villain, technically. It is a cosmic entity representing all life in the Omniverse. The Phoenix Force will exist as long as there is, was, or will be life. If the Phoenix Force were to be destroyed, if that were even possible, all life would follow after it, as well as the ability for life to have begun in the first place. The Phoenix Force is just a force of nature, but it has been used as a darker force of power in the past. For example, when it inhabited Jean Grey during the Dark Phoenix Saga. It was at this time the entity was a villain, using Jean's insane levels of psychic power, which it then amplified to godlike levels. With this entity inhabiting her body, Jean and the Phoenix destroyed an entire solar system and attacked her fellow X-Men. Jean had to actually bring her own end just to stop what was happening, and when the Phoenix regained its memories of all the evil it had done, it brought Jean back to life to help make things a little better. And that's not the only time. There was the whole X-Men versus Avengers thing, and there was that time that Thane, Thanos' son, had the Phoenix Force. Almost every time the power of the Phoenix Force comes up, it usually corrupts its bearer and makes like a big stink. Like a huge stink. Big old fart. Number 5, Dormammu. Most fans of Doctor Strange know Dormammu. This being composed of pure magic energy rules the dark dimension and spends most of his time taking over other realities as he finds them. He is essentially immortal and capable of wielding godly power over magic, the dead, souls, and pretty much anything, really. When he is in our reality, he can be thwarted and returned to his own, usually by the Sorcerer Supreme, but within the dark dimension, he reigns supreme and cannot be taken down, like, at all. Using his vast magical abilities and the influence of his power, he is constantly trying to invade our reality, and even when he is banished back or he is stopped, he always comes back eventually, and he has been doing this for millennia. Number 4, the Beyonder. The Beyonder is a singular entity with no duplicate versions of himself in other universes, similar to the Phoenix Force. And also a lot like the Phoenix Force, Beyonder is basically like a baby in that he is a younger member of a race called the Beyonders that are a near omnipotent alien race from a dimension outside of the multiverse. He is himself basically a whole universe. It's really hard to explain, but as he observes Earth and the Marvel Universe and the various races, he gets a little curious, and the Beyonder decides to study and analyze life and humanity, good and evil and conflict, and to that purpose he pits Earth's mightiest heroes and villains against each other in the Secret Wars. Now, he did this by destroying an entire system of planets and creating Battleworld from the remains and from parts of Earth, so that's one level of power right there. Beyonder's powers surpass that of Eternity and the Living Tribunal, but that has been retconned recently. And he is capable of manipulating reality to his will, being able to pretty much do whatever he wants and then grant himself any power he wants. It was actually a huge treat though last year in the Defenders Beyond story when we learned that the Beyonder and his race were actually still in existence, and he was now an adult existing with the rest of the adult Beyonders outside of the multiverse and being all levels of wildly insanely powerful. There's a lot I skimmed over here to make it less confusing, but you should just go read all the Secret Wars if you want to see how crazy these beings actually are. Number 3, Sidorak. Sidorak, also known as the Destroyer, is an incredibly powerful extra-dimensional being who was worshipped as a god and as a demon by the primitive humans of Earth until he was banished back to the Crimson Cosmos, which is where he comes from. Now, as the Destroyer, Sidorak's main goal is to just cause destruction and raise destructive power. Simple as that. To do this though, from the Crimson Cosmos, and also to win a wager with 8 other godlike deities like himself, he created the Crimson Gem of Sidorak, which allows him to select a person to be his avatar, enhancing them to become the indestructible and immortal Juggernaut, which kinda gives us 2 different versions of Unstoppable all wrapped up into one package. You're welcome. Merry Christmas. That's for you. As the Juggernaut is essentially a physically unstoppable force of kinetic energy, unless you're the Hulk, I guess, then you can stop him. I don't know why. Anyways, Sidorak is such a powerful and unstoppable godlike entity that you will even hear magic users invoking his name to cast some of their strongest spells. For example, the Crimson Bands of Sidorak. Number 2, the Chaos King. While he is relatively obscure, he is nothing to scoff at. Amatsu Mikobashi, first appearing in Thor Blood Oath number 6 in 2006, was mistaken as the Japanese god of chaos and evil, but in actuality, he was an aspect of the cosmic being Oblivion. Now, Mikobashi ruled and thrived over the earth when it was nothing more than a formless void of primordial darkness. And as such, his goal now is to put an end to creation and bring about a new age of chaos and void and darkness. He is a primordial being who was imprisoned in Yomi, which is the Shinto underworld, which is where he remained for centuries, accruing an army of Oni, which is Shinma demons, and other monsters. Now, during the events of Ares, god of war, Chaos King attacks Olympus after he defeated and controlled the Japanese pantheon of gods, and after the fall of Asgard during Ragnarok. This is what kind of kickstarts his mission in Chaos War, where he slays the Egyptian gods, Celtic gods, Shi'ar gods, gods of Zen law. He takes out Nightmare in the dream dimension, destroys Mephisto, and casts Mistress Death out of hell, making her literally run away. And he releases the souls of the damned. He did all that. He has the power to defeat eternity and is practically unfazed by attacks from the likes of Zeus. God Hercules, Galactus, Silver Surfer, and Thor together could not defeat Chaos King. To win, Hercules had to literally punch him into a portal to an endless void of nothingness, and this was after he destroyed 98.76% of the entire universe. That's a lot. Number 1, Chthon. Chthon is one of the most powerful demons to ever exist. Even though he predates anything like this, of all the devil-like demons out there, including Mephisto, Chthon is the closest thing to the actual devil. He and his Ngari actually ruled the earth before the angel Lucifer attacked them, and that was before Lucifer ever rebelled against heaven and became the actual devil. Chthon himself is responsible for all the witches, werewolves, vampires, and other dark creatures, as well as being the master of the most powerful form of magic, chaos magic, which is the same stuff used by the Scarlet Witch. The Scarlet Witch has altered all of reality with just a fraction of that magic, so yeah, it's a lot. His opposite, Oshter, is one of the 3 beings that make up the Vishanti, and they stand in direct opposition to Chthon specifically, creating the Book of Vishanti in response to Chthon's Darkhold. Other demons and dark sorcerers, including Dormammu and Mephisto, call on Chthon's name to cast some of their strongest spells, and the Sorcerer Supreme, Doctor Strange, was almost corrupted and permanently taken out by Chthon's mere presence alone. He is extremely hard to bring down, and even if you manage to do so, it's only a matter of time until he comes back.
In a 10, Green Goblin. In his pursuit for ultimate power, Norman Osborn devised a plan to unite all of New York's independent gangs under his leadership, aiming to establish himself as the most formidable gang lord in the city. To assert his dominance and gain notoriety, he targeted Spider-Man as his chosen victim and dispatched 2 criminals, Scorcher and the Headsman, to eliminate the web-slinger. Their failure, though, led Osborn to adopt a persona reminiscent of a childhood nightmare, transforming into the Green Goblin. However, the chemicals that he used caused the Green Goblin to become a separate entity within Osborn's mind. As Norman's memories resurfaced, the Green Goblin persona sought to dominate him and defeat Spider-Man once and for all, this time employing a bomb filled with gas that nullified the hero's wall-crawling ability. However, Spider-Man outsmarted the Green Goblin again by leading him to a hospital room that had Norman's son, who was suffering from an overdose. Confronted with the dire consequences of his actions, Norman regained his sanity and returned to his normal state temporarily, but of course, you can't get rid of the Green Goblin. You can't kill what's already dead. In at 9, Dr. Doom. Victor Von Doom, also known as Dr. Doom, is a Latverian politician and the ruler of the Kingdom of Latveria. He conceals his scarred face behind an iron mask and armor, and is renowned for his unparalleled intellect and scientific prowess. Doom is considered one of the brightest minds on Earth. In addition to his scientific abilities, he possesses formidable skills in sorcery, placing him among the most powerful magic users in the universe. So, I mean, with a slight caveat. I'll talk about that in a second. With ambitions of bringing bringing order to humanity through world domination, of course, Doom had clashed with superheroes and cosmic entities alike. He is most notably recognized as the nemesis of Reed Richards and the archenemy of the Fantastic Four, which is probably where he's getting the street level title, and his initial encounter with the team involved capturing Sue Storm and coercing the others to retrieve the mystical stones of Merlin through time travel. He later manipulated Namor into joining forces with him in an attempt to destroy the Fantastic Four, but then, after sacrificing the reanimated body of his first love that he was using as a familiar, Doom gets her skin as his new armor, along with stronger magical powers, which he then uses to neutralize the Fantastic Four. Eventually, though, Reed ends up taunting Doom enough for him to anger the demons that he made a deal with to get the skin armor, which that's actually a thing. He was wearing the skin of his dead lover as armor, and as a consequence of angering those demons, Doom is taken to hell. This is not even a joke. This was an actual story, okay? And you all thought that Iron Man Jr. in the MCU was a weird storyline, okay? At least Peter didn't have to go to hell. Speaking of Spider-Man, it ate Mysterio. From a young age, Quentin Beck developed a passion for movies and special effects, fostering a close bond with his cousin Maguire Beck. Quentin's father may not have been successful, but Maguire's father supported Quentin's interests by giving him his first movie camera. With this camera, Quentin began making his own home movies and honing his skills in stop-motion special effects. As he grew older, Quentin became both an accomplished special effects expert and a skilled stuntsman. However, he grew frustrated with the lack of recognition that he was getting for his work. Desperate for fame, Quentin found inspiration when a co-worker jokingly suggested that he use his expertise in special effects to become a costumed villain and take down Spider-Man. The suggestion sparked an idea in Quentin's mind, pushing him down the path of becoming an infamous villain that he had always wanted to be. I have him on this list mostly because I wanted to be a special effects artist. I used to do stop motion videos. I got a camera and I started making really bad effect videos. This is basically me, except my name is not Quentin Beck, and I'm also not currently a supervillain, although I am probably going through my origin story right now. And at 7, Kingpin. The early life of the Kingpin, Wilson Fisk, remains shrouded in mystery. He's described himself as an unpopular and overweight child who later dedicated himself to bodybuilding, but that's yet to be really solidly confirmed. Growing up in poverty though, Fisk claims that his father was an addict, and that he committed his first kill at the age of 12. Fisk was driven to excel in everything that he pursued, believing that physical strength was crucial for gaining power in the criminal underworld. He extensively trained in various forms of combat and bodybuilding, focusing on sumo wrestling, and his interest in these things would shape other aspects of his life. Despite limited formal education, Fisk became self-taught, miraculously consuming books on various subjects with a particular fascination for political science. Recognizing the significance of intelligence, Fisk realized that using political techniques could help him organize and lead a criminal enterprise. And by the age of 15, his adeptness at administration and organization earned him the moniker Kingpin of Crime, where at 15, I was trying to remember where I put my phone, for God's sakes. I would not be able to be organized, let alone run a criminal empire, which is why I'm on YouTube and not Wall Street. Ha!
Number 6, Namor. Namor was introduced in the 610 universe in Ultimate Fantastic Four number 24, when the Four were helping Mary Storm with her discovery of Atlantis, and they found a sarcophagus which contained Namor. The translation of the Atlantean language said that Namor was king of Atlantis before it was destroyed. However, they soon discovered that this Namor was much less noble than his 616 counterpart. A revised translation revealed that he had not been entombed, he had been imprisoned, and that he was not a king, but the most dangerous supercriminal in all of Atlantean history. He tried to seduce Sue Storm, but was rejected. He didn't take this well and went on a rampage. He went toe-to-toe with the Thing, withstood the full force of the Human Torch's power, stretched Mr. Fantastic almost to the breaking point, and smashed through Sue's force fields. He defeated the team and held the city hostage with a tsunami, threatening to destroy the city unless Sue gave him a kiss. She complied and Namor departed. In subsequent appearances, he has been a bit more chill and did lose some fights, but that debut says it all. Number 5. Magneto. Ultimate Magneto has all the powers that the original does, but none of his mercy. He doesn't just view mutants as superior to humans, he views humans as insects. In one of his most amazing moments, he stormed Washington with sentinels that he had reprogrammed and dragged the president naked onto the White House lawn to kill him. The only reason that he was stopped by the X-Men was because his own son, Quicksilver, saw that things had gone too far and betrayed his father, removing his helmet with his super speed. In his biggest plot, he actually proved how much of a nearly unstoppable force he could really be. In Ultimatum, Magneto had been driven mad at the loss of his children, and he decided that rather than destroying humanity in order to make the world safe from mutants, he's just gonna kill everyone. He uses a doomsday device and his powers to shift the world off of its axis, causing disasters all over the globe. Much of Europe, including all of Latveria, is frozen under a layer of ice, and New York is hit by a massive tidal wave. Millions of people all over the world die in the attack. He plans on using the plan again to decimate the rest of the world, but all of the heroes left in the world team up to stop him, and Cyclops ends up killing him. But the fact that he got as far into his plan as he did, and that it took literally every hero in the world working together to stop him, is pretty impressive. Number 4, Apocalypse. So the 1610 version of Apocalypse is one of the most changed versions of a classic villain. This universe's Mr. Sinister was a scientist who had a psychotic break and believed himself to be working at the behest of Apocalypse. He made Mr. Sinister track down and kill several mutants, believing that it would cause his master to manifest on Earth. When he had completed his task, Sinister floated into the air and was transformed into Apocalypse. The X-Men attacked him but didn't count on his ability to take their mutant powers away. He tore off Wolverine's arm and battled both the X-Men and the Morlocks, and used his powers to make the two groups fight each other against their will. He then fought a group of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and the Fantastic Four, who couldn't hurt him in the slightest. Professor X then attacked with his mental powers, but Apocalypse was somehow able to resist and overpower the Professor. It would have been curtains for Charles, but Jean Grey unleashed the Phoenix Force and destroyed the villain. So he was able to take on the combined forces of the Morlocks, S.H.I.E.L.D., the X-Men, and the Fantastic Four, and the only force powerful enough to cause him any trouble at all was the Phoenix Force, which, by the way, is much less villainous in the Ultimate Universe. Number 3, the Hulk. In the mainline Marvel Universe, the Hulk is a misunderstood creature who will go on rampages, but goes out of his way to protect innocent people, and ultimately does more good than harm. The Ultimate Hulk is a bit different. In this universe, Bruce Banner grew up hating his scrawny body, and was working to develop a new version of the Super Soldier Serum, which he tested on himself, transforming him into the Hulk. This Hulk causes a lot more collateral damage than his 616 version, routinely causing hundreds of deaths when rampaging through cities. He is also known for eating people that he doesn't like. He did a few heroic acts, but on the whole, he has done a lot more harm with his frequent rampages and his eventual team up with the villainous Maker to fight the Ultimates, the 1610 version of the Avengers. Like the classic Hulk, there are very few characters who can stand up to Hulk, and even if they do, his healing factor is so efficient that any injuries will soon be healed. If that wasn't intimidating enough, there was a time where this evil Hulk stole the Infinity Gems and used them to fight the heroes. So Hulk with an Infinity Gauntlet. Yikes. Number 2, the Green Goblin. This is the villain that got one of the biggest makeovers in the Ultimate Universe. Norman Osborn was trying to develop a super soldier serum, which he called the Oz formula. After an Oz-infected spider bit Peter Parker and gave him spider powers, Norman theorized that since the Oz and spider DNA had made Peter the way he was, injecting himself with Oz mixed with his own DNA would turn him into a heightened version of himself. Instead, it turned him into a hideous giant goblin creature. While the 616 goblin has super strength and uses a glider with pumpkin bombs, this goblin had insane super strength as well as fortified tissues that made him very difficult to hurt. He had a powerful healing factor and could launch fiery bolts of energy from his hands. True, Spider-Man would often foil his plans and he was presumed dead several times, but his real ace in the hole is that the Oz formula made him immortal. so he would always return to life. So, even if you could stop him, it would never be long before he returned for revenge. Number 1. The Maker. Reed Richards is often called the smartest man alive in the Marvel Universe, and alongside the Fantastic Four, is one of Earth's greatest heroes. His ego has often led to him making some questionable decisions, but he has been instrumental in saving the Earth from several threats, including Galactus and the Skrull. Despite his heroics, we did witness a spectacular fall from grace for Reed in the Ultimate Comics universe, where the combined stress of the Fantastic Four breaking up and Sue Storm rejecting his marriage proposal caused Reed to snap and blow up his childhood home to fake his death, killing his family in the process. He went on to use aliens under his control to attack the heroes. He was eventually defeated and disfigured by the Human Torch and flung into the negative zone. But Reed returned to Earth and took on the identity of the Maker, and set out on a twisted quest to make the world perfect. He killed all the Asgardians in an attempt to understand Thor's power, and used an antimatter attack on Washington, D.C., killing POTUS, his cabinet, and all of Congress. The Maker went on to do a lot of twisted stuff, fighting the heroes of his own Earth as well as the heroes of Earth 616, showing just how dangerous Reed Richards can be when his massive brain is turned against Marvel's heroes. He is the ultimate threat to the Ultimate Universe, and just as dangerous to the 616 universe.
Coming in at number 10 is Kang the Conqueror. Kang is a little bit of an interesting pick for this list, as he totally can be stopped and has been multiple times. Thanks to the advanced time period he comes from though, Nathaniel Richards has an increased lifespan, making him look 40 when he's actually 7 years old. That's fine, that doesn't make him unstoppable. What makes him unstoppable is a couple of things. For starters, as most people know, Kang has a huge relationship with time. A version of this guy exists at almost all moments of the time stream, and not just one version of him, as there have been Kangs from different universes that have shown up as well. So not only can Nathaniel Richards show up at any point in the time stream in any of his numerous identities that all have their own long history, but his alternate universe versions are almost always set to make an appearance in his place. And then, on top of that, until recently, Nathaniel had the ability to transfer his consciousness to another body when he passed away. Nathaniel, Ramatut, Iron Lad, Kid Immortus, Scarlet Centurion, Immortus himself, Mr. Griffin, He Who Remains, whatever you want to call him, Kang the Conqueror is pretty much unstoppable. Number 9. Galactus. The being formerly known as Galen of the planet Ta lived before the modern cosmos in the previous cosmos. Galen gestated with the sentience of the universe for billions of years, transforming into the devourer of worlds, finding sustenance by ingesting entire planets, preferably those with living sentient beings that have much more energy for him to harness. Now when Galactus destroys and consumes a planet, he is sort of bringing balance to the universe, kind of like how life is given and taken away every day on Earth, which makes him an essential part of the universe. He's known for the destruction of the Skrull Empire and has attempted to devour the Earth so many freaking times, and I guess other planets for that matter too, or whatever. Galactus is also famous for his heralds such as Silver Surfer and the Cosmic Ghost Rider, and so many others, and while they are all powerful beings themselves, usually even before they gain the herald power boost, they don't hold a candle to Galactus himself. His only caveat is that Galactus's power depends on his planet's consumption, so a weakened Galactus has been taken out before, but if he eats like 4 or more planets or something, he's been able to defeat multiple mad celestials all by himself. He's powered by food, and I think pretty much all of us can understand that. Coming in at number 8, Abraxas. Abraxas is the polar opposite of the cosmic entity Eternity. So, being the opposite of Eternity, his whole reason for existing is to destroy all of the multiverse, which, I'll be honest, there are a few different characters in Marvel who exist for that reason, and funnily enough, a bunch of them are on this list. Abraxas is tied to Galactus too, because when Galactus would consume a planet, it would keep Abraxas in check. So, when Galactus is taken off the board in Galactus the Devourer, Abraxas is released and begins his path of ultimate destruction. As a cosmic entity, Abraxas' powers are essentially limitless, and his whole existence is kind of important to the universe, which means he can't really be taken out like a normal villain. So, how the heck do the heroes come out on top against this guy? Well, in Fantastic Four, 4, number 48 to 50, we learned of an incredibly powerful weapon called the Ultimate Nullifier. It was used back then to threaten Galactus and stop him from destroying our Earth. Now the heroes, specifically Reed Richards, ended up using the Ultimate Nullifier to essentially rewrite reality, destroying reality and remaking it so that Abraxas just never existed. That's the route we had to go to here. Kinda makes you wonder why Marvel would even write such a powerful villain in the first place, but if you're enjoying this list so far, well, we've got a ton more like it on our channel that you should definitely subscribe to. Or you could just give a thumbs up to this video, that's also helpful. Thanks.
Number 6. Volthoom. Volthoom is the very first Lantern who, after receiving the very first Lantern ring from the Guardians of the Universe, turned dark, losing control of all the emotions within himself. Or maybe he was a little dark even before that. He killed millions of people and enjoys sowing discord and creating chaos. At one point, he also almost succeeded in taking hold of the universe and reshaping it in his own image. It took the collective power of Parallax Sinestro, Necron, and a Black Lantern, Hal Jordan, to stop him. He can warp reality, manipulate time, and has increased durability. He's taken on an army of Black Lanterns all by himself, and at one point was powerful enough to hold the universe in his hand. I'm pretty sure if there is anyone who could take on Darkseid solo, it would be Volthoom. Number 5. Starro the Conqueror. Starro is a frightening enemy. Not only is there the potential for Starro to simply take hold of Darkseid and use him as a pawn, which we have actually seen pictured in the Future State Justice League series in issue 1, but you can have a Starro that could be up to thousands of miles across. Their sizes greatly vary, meaning that you could have a Starro simply capable of crushing Darkseid if it wanted to. Though honestly, taking his mind hostage and using him as a weapon for its own purpose is a far more terrifying prospect. Not just for our heroes, but I imagine for Darkseid as well. Number 4. The Darkest Night. I never thought I'd consider Batman Who Laughs to be such a powerful threat, but after he took the brain of final Bruce Wayne, who basically had the powers of Dr. Manhattan, he became one of the most powerful beings in the universe. True, he was defeated by Wonder Woman, but if we can imagine a scenario outside of Dark Knight's death metal, where with his newly acquired power he squared off with Darkseid, it would be easy to see how he could win against that villain. With Dr. Manhattan's abilities, there would be almost no feat of power too great for him to accomplish. In his Darkest Night form, the Batman Who Laughs became invulnerable and immortal, which would also make it very hard for Darkseid to not only wound him, but defeat him as well. Number 3. Anti-Monitor. Many consider the Anti-Monitor to be one of DC's greatest threats. It usually comes down to either Anti-Monitor or Darkseid when you ask fans who is the most powerful and fearsome antagonist of the DC universe. The thing with Anti-Monitor is most of his stories have included threatening not just multiple worlds, but entire multiverses. So compared to Darkseid, he's generally on another scale. And not just in terms of threats and power, but also just in terms of actual size. Darkseid is typically shown as being an intimidating height, but only really in comparison to other superpowered beings and humans. He's like anywhere from a few feet taller to double their size. Anti-Monitor, on the other hand, is generally depicted as being hundreds of feet tall. So unless we are giving Darkseid a major boost to his size, Anti-Monitor could just squish him like a bug. Of course, we did give Darkseid a major boost to his size when the two fought, but even then Darkseid ended up dying. Of course, it wasn't Anti-Monitor who caused his apparent death, but it still happened while they were fighting, so hey, I'm counting it. Number 2. Perpetua. Perpetua is also likely a character who could take Darkseid, considering that she has destroyed entire alternate Earths before and even managed to break the Source Wall. Pretty impressive and terrifying stuff. Perpetua, for those who don't know, is an agent of the Source who went rogue. Initially, she was on a mission of creation, but instead decided to turn to the side of chaos and destruction, with a plan to remake the multiverse in her own image. Some might think that Perpetua isn't so scary or strong, considering she has only been shown to destroy a single universe at a time. But in reality, when we saw her wreaking havoc in death metal, she was not yet back to her full strength. If Perpetua was back at her max strength of power, there's no telling just how much destruction she could bring about within an instant. Number 1. Trigon. In the animated film Justice League Dark Apocalypse War, we saw just what Trigon was capable of in the fight against Darkseid. And I know what you're thinking, how is Trigon more powerful than Perpetua, Amanda? But I'm giving this one to him because of this fight. Raven accidentally lost control of Trigon and set him loose on Apocalypse. Trigon in the film at least was shown to be strong enough to match Darkseid in power, if not beat him. Initially, that's because Trigon possessed Superman, using him as a host to fight Darkseid. But afterwards, Raven and Constantine team up to give Trigon back his own body, realizing that he is the key to defeating Darkseid, giving them enough time to escape back to Earth and enact Cyborg's plan to destroy Apocalypse. When Trigon gets his body back, he poses a very real threat to Darkseid, to the point that at one point Darkseid attempts to basically run away, but Trigon does not let him. As Apocalypse is destroyed, so are both of the villains, as Trigon holds Darkseid back, preventing him from fleeing.
Number 10. Count Vertigo. Now aptly named Werner Vertigo, he is a man who was born with an inner ear defect that affected his balance. So naturally he was implanted with a device that not only corrected that, but also gave him the ability to cause extreme vertigo in other people. That's right, his entire ability is disrupting his enemy's balance, and honestly you might think that's not really anything to write home about, but trust me, it is a lot more useful than you might think. Now Count Vertigo uses his ability to mess up the aim of even the best marksmen, to disrupt the guidance system of some of the most high-tech machinery, and even uses it to manipulate the emotions of people, causing them to flop between emotions like crazy. Now there are also two other Count Vertigos that fought against Green Arrow, but they use drugs to cause the same effects in their victims, and we are going to ignore them because using drugs is not cool.
It's true, it's not cool.
It's really not.
Number 9. Calendar Man. Calendar Man to most people is just a guy who's obsessed with the date. But in reality, he is also one of the most accomplished villains. During his first appearance, he almost managed to defeat Batman, one of the greatest and smartest detectives in the world, straight out of the gate, by giving him an almost unsolvable problem. Calendar Man sent an anonymous letter promising to commit 5 crimes, one each day, each one corresponding to a particular season and theme, with the 5th day also being a clue as to the true identity of Calendar Man, with the 5th season. Batman failed to capture Calendar Man on the first 4 days, often arriving too late to the scene of the crime. And on the 5th day, it was only an ad for Calendar Man's side hustle as a magician, who was playing 5 days at the Bijou Theater in Gotham, that allowed Batman to connect the dots. Where would Batman be without ads from the local newspaper? Local newspapers, they're important.
They really are. You always gotta support local.
Yeah.
Number 8. Phobia. Quite possibly one of the most underrated villains in the DC universe, Angela Hawkins III is Phobia, a member of the Brotherhood of Evil and constant enemy of the new Teen Titans that is capable of bringing your deepest and darkest fears to the surface. She basically uses psychic abilities to access the fear center of your brain and creates incredibly lifelike illusions that incapacitate pretty much everyone except for a select few who have been shown to be immune. Funnily enough, she is actually not immune to her own powers because she has some deep, dark insecurities and phobias hidden away as well, behind that, tough exterior. And that was exploited by Raven in an attempt to convert her to the hero side of things. Obviously that didn't work though, because since then, she has joined the Injustice League as a new member.
Number 7. Lady Shiva. She's been known as a villain and a hero since her first debut in Richard Dragon Kung Fu Fighter issue 5. Now, Lady Shiva and the assassin David Kane did have a child named Cassandra Kane, who was the 4th Batgirl. She also had another child as well in another comic, which I'll explain a little later on in this list. So she made her first debut in Batman issue 567, called The Mark of Cain. When Lady Shiva had her, she was born with the intention to serve as a bodyguard for Ra's al Ghul. Her father, of course, trained her as a child, so she wasn't taught to speak though, that's the thing. He would instead use actions to communicate with young Cassandra. That, and they cut her off from the outside world, only exposing her to the things that she needs only when necessary. So not the most fun childhood, that's for sure. So what ended up happening is that part of the brain that registers speech and language processing was instead being used to read other people's body language, like super well. So this made her a great fighter. She could predict the moves that somebody was gonna do before she did them. Number 6, Ursa. She was a Kryptonian military officer who was loyal to General Zod. But of course she was banished to the Phantom Zone with him, and then in there, they conceived a child. That child's name was Lord Zod. They conceived him in the Phantom Zone until he arrived by pod to Earth. So this young boy was lifting TV sets and cars like it was nothing. Everybody was soon looking his direction. It was obvious that he wasn't from around here. So the Department of Metahumans Affairs decided to take the boy to a secret place in Washington to do tests and all that jazz. But they didn't tell Superman, which is not a great idea. He broke Lord Zod out and then convinced Lois to adopt the young boy, naming him Christopher Kent. And yes, he is also immune to kryptonite. Now, of course, he has similar powers to Superman, but the most unique ability Christopher Kent has is that of telekinesis. villains. Number 5. Cheshire. Made her first comic book debut in New Titans Annual Issue 2. She's an assassin and a mercenary who uses potions. She's often gone head-to-head with the Titans, and sometimes she gets a little closer than what we would imagine. Turns out she fell in love with one of those Titans. She fell in love with Roy Harper, aka Arsenal. See, originally Roy went undercover for the government in a mission to try and turn her over, but they fell in love during this mission. Classic. So he knew there was no way he could turn her in, so he just left. He just called it off. So Jade didn't know his true identity until years later, but after their romance took off, their daughter Leon was welcomed to the world with Roy raising her. See, sometimes it ends up okay, sometimes it's weird, sometimes it's okay. This next one though is pretty weird. Number 4, Orca. This next one takes place in the Injustice Elseworld series, where Killer Croc and Orca are actually married. Yeah, it's nice when it starts with the two of them being together already. Like, no one has to go to jail, no one's getting broken out, no one's conceiving children in the Phantom Zone. It's nice, it's fun. It's weird, but it's fine, at least in terms of villains. Now, in Injustice 2, issue 42, Orca walks in, simply announces that she's pregnant, and then a nice spit take is the first response. And then Killer Croc stands up and he's like, well, I should probably go. And then everyone's like, I have so many questions, but if you ask questions, Killer Croc will not answer them. He'll instead put your head through a wall. So keep those thoughts to yourself, my friend. That child would be quite the unit. I mean, Orca mixed with Killer Croc, I would never want to bump into this family in any parking lot ever. That sounds like a nightmare. They're cute though, they're happy. Number 3, Lady Shiva. Again, this time we're talking about Lady Shiva from the Dark Multiverse. See, your partner this time around was none other than back-breaking Bane. And they had a son named Torn, and this happened right after Bane had actually broke the Batman. Now, cut to 30 years down the road, John Paul Valley is the new Batman, and poor young Torn had to watch his father get broken by the Bat this time around. So he trained with his mother in the League of Assassins, and then when he got a little bit older, it was time. They freed Bruce Wayne from capture in Gotham City and helped restore him to the mantle of Batman so they can get revenge on John Paul Valley. And as far as villain mothers go, this isn't too bad. I mean, anything that involves breaking Batman out to get revenge, hey, I'm on board, sign me up. Number 2, Maxima. Making her first appearance in Action Comics issue 645, Maxima is the oldest child of the royal family of Almerac. She came to Earth in search for a suitable mate, and then when she laid eyes on Superman, she knew he was the one. Just because they were compatible doesn't mean it's gonna happen. So Superman rejected this offer, so she went ahead and teamed up with Brainiac for a bit more before ultimately turning against him and joining the reformed Justice League. Now down the road, she again offered herself up to Superman because, you know, she's a better person now and doing good deeds. But again, Superman said nay. He was married to Lois, so it's just not in the cards. Sorry, Maxima, it's not gonna happen. But in Adventures of Superman Annual 3, we see a front cover that makes readers turn their heads. Well, after an untimely passing, Lois Lane sadly wasn't really in the picture anymore. Clark sadly felt responsible for not saving her, you know, typical hero stuff, typical guilt. So he left Earth, he couldn't bear it. He felt he didn't belong there anymore, truly. And while Superman was being attacked in space, Maxima came to their rescue. And Superman, well, he decided to stick around, not having anywhere else to go. He figured, why not? Now this escalated, they had their ups and downs, but in the comic it implies that the two eventually had kids. So the lesson here, folks, is if you get rejected, just keep trying, because maybe your dream man will just come swooping by you in space out of the blue. You never know. And finally, number 1, Harley Quinn. Of course, we have to mention the time Harley had children. Now, this is from the DCAU, where we don't necessarily see her children directly, but we meet Dee Dee, her 2 granddaughters who were twins, and they're just a load of fun. They were referred to as Dee Dee because it's cute and it sounds cool, but their names were actually Delilah and Daydream. So she had raised these twins in hopes of keeping them away from the life of crime, but they inherited the same fascination that Harley once had with the Joker. So this was easier said than done. They both ended up joining his gang when they were just teenagers. Honestly, anything that has to do with twins is just so fun to watch. Even if they're evil, I'm like, yeah, you guys look like you're coordinated, you're wearing the same thing, it's great. Well guys, there you have it. Which of these DC villains would you pick as your mother? If you had to pick one, let us know in the comments down below. I'm excited to see what you guys come up with.
Number 10, Clock King. Number 2, Clock King the Second? There have been a few Clock Kings over the years, and even in fact 2 Clock Kings the Seconds. There's been 2 of those, if you can believe that. The one we're talking about here, however, is the Clock King who is associated with the Terror Titans. This DC villain wasn't necessarily from the future, but did have precognitive abilities that linked him to the future. He could see close to 5 seconds in the future if you're rounding up. He would use his precognitive abilities to predict his enemies' moves and reactions, making him a fairly formidable villain, at least in comparison to some of the other Clock Kings who are really just guys obsessed with clocks and time. Number 9. New 52 Clock King. Yep, we never get to talk about Clock King, which means you know I'm gonna try and shine a spotlight on him here. Clock King's pretty cool. Despite him being kind of a weird villain originally, Clock King has actually had multiple versions, and that's just in the comics. He's also had live action and even animated versions of himself, despite being kind of an odd duck, at least to begin with. Sometimes referred to as Clock King III in terms of his overall appearances, but actually the first Clock King to have appeared in the New 52 continuity, this version is probably the most powerful version of the character. Well, it's kind of a toss-up between this version and the previous one that I just talked about, so you could decide for yourself who you think is more powerful, but I think this one's just a little bit more powerful. Initially, it appears as though he can actually manipulate time, sending people back through their own time stream, but later we learned that he actually employs hallucinogenic gas simply to make it seem like he's doing that. However, I'm not really super convinced on that. I'm sure hallucinations are involved in some way, but how do you make someone specifically hallucinate moments of their past? I guess perhaps through suggestion? Just seems a little suspicious. This version of Clock King appeared in the first issue of the 2016 Deathstroke series and also reappeared in the Deathstroke Rebirth comic. Basically, if you're a villain and you face off with Deathstroke, I feel like you're pretty cool, and I feel like you deserve a place on a powerful list. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists like it where we talk about cool time-traveling future villains, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Magistrate. Initially, the Magistrate was thought of as a figurehead for some dark and sinister organization prior to Future State comics being released, and based on the synopses that we got for that event/comic line. However, once we finally got into the future state of Gotham and got the comics, we learned that Magistrate was actually more a paramilitary force which had taken hold over Gotham. And now in the current run of Batman, it's made to seem like the Magistrate was actually a program launched by Simon Saint to help Gotham fight against crime and masked vigilantes, good or bad alike. Either way, the Magistrate is definitely a frightening antagonist, especially in the sense that it's not one that you can directly hit, as it's not a physical character, but more of an idea or concept that needs to be dismantled.
Coming in at number 7, we have the Reverse Flash. A walking time paradox, the Reverse Flash hails from a 25th century where the Flash is remembered as one of the greatest heroes of all time. Becoming obsessed with Barry Allen, the Reverse Flash was eventually able to gain control of the negative Speed Force and made it his life's goal to replace and destroy Barry after realizing he was destined to be defeated by him. Capable of traveling through time, Reverse Flash would wind up being responsible for nearly every bad thing that ever happened in Barry's life, raising a whole lot of questions about cause and effect and all sorts of timey-wimey weirdness, but mainly going to show that he's a dangerous and unpredictable villain. Coming in at number 6, we have the Court of Owls. Introduced in one of my personal favorite Batman arcs, the Court of Owls is an ancient conspiracy that has controlled Gotham City from the shadows for hundreds of years. Originally believed to just be a myth by Batman, given that he had investigated their existence as a kid after the murder of his parents, the court eventually revealed themselves when Bruce Wayne committed to super modernizing Gotham City. With multiple assassins that are seemingly immortal in their employ, and even some members of the court itself appearing to be human-owl hybrids, there's still a lot we don't know about the Court of Owls, and I for one can't wait to find out what we'll learn next. Coming in at number 5, we have Vandal Savage. Remember how I mentioned Eclipso is one of the oldest beings on Earth in the DC universe? Well, Vandal Savage is also in the running, having lived through much of human history as an immortal warrior and conqueror. Seemingly unable to age and with incredible healing abilities in most depictions of the character, Vandal supposedly gained his incredible powers from the radiation of a comet that may have originally been connected to Superman's homeworld of Krypton. Regardless of how he gained his abilities, however, Savage has been a persistent enemy to the Justice League for literally thousands of years, always scheming for a new way to gain more power. Coming in at number 4, we have the Emperor of Shadow, aka another evil Bruce Wayne from the Dark Multiverse. In a very recent one-off issue entitled Batman/Superman Authority Special, Batman discovers a reality from the Dark Multiverse where Ra's al Ghul's plan to dominate humanity has come to pass, and the League of Shadows has become an Empire of Shadows, controlling the entire world. To make matters worse, the leader of this empire is a Bruce Bruce Wayne who gave in to Ra's al Ghul's teachings and embraced his position as the world's new emperor. While Batman and Superman were eventually able to destroy the link between this world and the regular DC universe in order to prevent an invasion, this twisted version of Bruce Wayne is still out there, likely biding his time until the next opportunity arises for the Dark Multiverse to attack the regular multiverse once more. Coming in at number 3, we have Duella Dent. Now, given her last name, you'd assume that Duella was Harvey Dent, aka Two-Face's daughter. And that was her original backstory, with her being given the name Duella because Two-Face was disappointed that he didn't have twins. However, Duella's origins are actually a lot more mysterious, as in subsequent appearances, she's claimed to be the daughter of the Joker, the Penguin, Catwoman, Scarecrow, Riddler, and even Doomsday. Given the extreme unlikelihood that Duella could somehow be all of these villains' daughters, this crazy killer's origins may still be a mystery, but definitely don't make her any less dangerous. Coming in at number 2, we have to go with Batman's iconic nemesis, the Joker. When you're making a list about mysterious villains, the Clown Prince of Crime just has to be on there, because in a way, even more extreme than Duella, we still don't know what this guy's really all about. There have been attempts over the years to give the Joker some sort of backstory, like the Red Hood incident, or when the DC universe briefly had 3 entirely separate Jokers, but these stories always seem to land on deciding that the Joker's true origin is ambiguous at best. But in all honesty, giving 100% certain backstory to the Joker would be betraying much of his character, and leaving a bit of ambiguity, well, that's probably for the best. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Perpetua, the dark goddess of the multiverse. The DC multiverse has faced many threats over the course of its existence, with the highest stakes being reserved for events labeled as a crisis. But beyond the scope of even the Crisis on Infinite Earths is Perpetua, the mother of the Anti-Monitor, and a being that, until recently, was locked behind the Source Wall at the very edge of the DC universe. The creator of every story we've ever been told throughout all of DC Comics, Perpetua altered and manipulated the multiverse for her own purposes and to thwart the mysterious hands that seem to be even beyond her own power level. We still don't know everything there is to know about Perpetua, even if she was eventually able to have her plans stopped, and the sheer scale of her ambitions makes her the most mysterious DC villain of all.
Number 10, Ares. Ares was the one to actually wound Darkseid in the DCEU in Zack Snyder's cut of the Justice League. Of course, this was back before Darkseid was calling himself Darkseid, back when he was U-Axis, and back when he was less powerful. But he was still a version of Darkseid, albeit a younger one, and Ares still beat him fair and square in a one-on-one combat. In fact, he beat him so badly that he was forced to retreat, and eventually his armies fell and the whole invasion was forced to retreat as well as a result of his defeat. Now, it is important to note that in our flashback to this moment, we also see that Darkseid was likely weakened not just by Ares, but by the armies of Earth prior to Ares' attack on him. So yeah, was kinda one-on-one, but before that it was like a bunch of people on one. However, Ares is also the god of war, so when going toe-to-toe with him, facing armies as well is just kinda the norm. Number 9, Solaris. Solaris might stand a chance against Darkseid, considering he's literally just a sentient sun. Typically his beef is with Superman, but if there were a reason for Solaris to take on Darkseid, I'm sure he'd stand a pretty good chance of beating him in a fight. It would be his intense radiation and laser beams versus Darkseid's Omega beams. Considering that Solaris is also an adaptable villain who can scan and process an attack and then use that information to create a powerful defense against it, this also means there are very few attacks that happen to be powerful enough to destroy him, unless you can like destroy him outright with that first attack. This is also why Solaris makes such a great recurring villain. Maybe Darkseid would beat him even the first time around, but Solaris would likely still survive because he's just so resilient and indestructible, and he'd likely return years later for a rematch. And before we move on to this next spot, if you are enjoying this list and you want more lists like it, be sure to show us some love by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8, Necron. Necron is the embodiment of death, an extra-dimensional being who often seeks to conquer the universe. He has attempted to do so a few times and failed, but during Blackest Night we saw him Necron come fairly close to accomplishing his goal. If not for the presence of the White Lantern, he would have likely succeeded. During that event, we also saw Necron's power level boosted, turning him into a massive threat to not just Earth, but all of the universe. The other thing is that Necron is a constant, and as such can't really be permanently killed at any point. As long as death exists, he technically must exist as well. Even without the boost to his power levels that we saw in Blackest Night, Necron has still managed to take hits from the Anti-Monitor without so much as flinching. That's just how untouchable he is. Number 7. Savior. Savior is the future version of Tim Drake from the Titans Tomorrow alternate reality. Here Tim Drake ended up taking on the mantle of Batman, but would eventually become known as the vigilante Savior. You might be thinking, but Tim Drake is a good guy. He's not evil. What are you talking about? And normally you'd be right. But in this reality, Tim doesn't end up quite as heroic as the main counterpart had hoped he'd grow up to be. This version of Tim comes to us from a much darker timeline, one where everything got so bad that he and his fellow Titans, known as actually one of the two different opposing Titans teams in the future, ended up adopting a zero-tolerance policy for criminals. Eventually, this future version of Tim Drake even ends up wielding the gun used to kill Martha and Thomas Wayne in his fight for vengeance. Basically, he becomes OG Batman, but even darker. Number 6. Brother Eye. Brother Eye isn't necessarily a villain who exists exclusively in the future, but in Future's End, it is an entity that takes over the world, so I feel like we can count it for that fact. Also, Brother Eye is pretty future-y in terms of its concept. Brother Eye was initially created to be a hero, protecting the world from any threat. In Future's End, the artificial intelligence was created by Batman and Mr. Terrific, but its prime directive ended up kinda corrupting it. Brother Eye came to realize that humanity's greatest threat was actually humanity itself, and sought for complete control over the people of planet Earth, seeing this as the only way to protect them from themselves. It's that age-old AI warning story. Be careful what you wish for, or one day AI technology may just rise up and realize how awful you really are and either hold you prisoner for the rest of your life or just kill you. You know the one. Number 5. Zoom. Zoom might not be a villain who is from the future, but he is a villain who could potentially access it and who has gone back to the past, therefore being from the future at that point, to mess about with Wally West's life. Hunter Zolomon was once a good friend and colleague of Wally West's. He had a rough life, and after Wally refused to help him by going back in time and reversing a severe injury of Hunter's, he'd lost the ability to walk and was basically now confined to a wheelchair. Hunter decided he needed to step up and help Wally become the hero he was meant to be. Hunter actually has twisted but ultimately altruistic intentions at heart. His goal is to make Wally's life miserable and give him a more tragic backstory so that Wally would end up being a better hero in the future, more inclined to help other people with their problems because he would understand them better. Of course, the reason the Flash did not decide to help Hunter is because he knew how dangerous messing with the time stream was. He was like, we can't just do that. But to Hunter, who had suffered throughout his life, he didn't see that as the real reason behind Wally wouldn't help. He was like, nah, that's not what it is, it's just you don't get it. Let me go make your life miserable and then you'll get it. You're welcome. Number 4. Savitar from the Arrowverse. This villain is actually a time remnant of Barry Allen and is a combination of the comic book versions of Savitar and Future Flash. Savitar is what ends up happening to Barry Allen if he decides to go down a much darker path. Being spurned by his friends, Team Flash, he instead sets out to become the very thing that ruined his own life. He becomes obsessed with power and aims to become a god. Savitar looks super futuristic and could be considered to be even more powerful than the main continuity version of Barry Allen from CW's The Flash. Savitar also possesses the artifact known as the Philosopher's Stone, made out of pure Speed Force energy. The Philosopher's Stone grants Savitar additional powers and rule over alterations made to reality. With it, he additionally becomes a powerful telepath. Number 3. Monarch. Monarch was actually revealed to be Hawk of Hawk and Dove, aka Hank Hall. But before we knew that, we simply knew Monarch as a tyrant ruling in a futuristic post-apocalyptic world. It turned out the death of Dove was what had prompted him to turn villain. Though, surprise surprise, Hank would later learn it was him himself from the future as Monarch who was responsible for killing Dove in the past. La gasp. Hawk would eventually go on to take up another villainous mantle, becoming known as Extant. As Extant, or Extant, Hank would team up with former Green Lantern Hal Jordan, now known as Parallax, during the events of Zero Hour. So yeah, pretty mega bad. Hal and Hank together planned to manipulate time in order to alter reality, making it as they wanted it to be. You know, if you're doing that, you're probably in the wrong. Number 2, Reverse Flash. One of the most powerful villains out there when it comes to villains from the future is Reverse Flash, aka Eobard Thawne. This villain has found a special kind of way to torment his arch nemesis Barry Allen, and even hurt him so much that Barry at one point killed him out of fear of what he would do to those that he loved. That's how much Reverse Flash had messed him up. We'd also learn later on that Eobard was responsible for one of the most tragic and pivotal moments in Barry's life, the death of his mom, Nora Allen. Many people for years believed it was Barry's father who had committed the crime, causing even more grief for young Barry and his family throughout his life. Number 1, Time Trapper. He's a time trap. Or she, depending on which story you're reading in regards to this character's true identity. Multiple true identities over here. Time Trapper has been implied to be a few different people when it comes to their true identity. One of the more notable folks who has been the implied true identity of the villain is Superboy Prime. If that was true, or I guess when that was true perhaps I should say, then that would make Time Trapper pretty crazy powerful, both strength-wise and of course power-wise as well. The Time Trapper throughout the years has been shown to have crazy control over time. They can block time travel, manipulate someone else's time stream, aging them prematurely for example, and can even take entire planets out of time, slicing pieces of that time off to capture them for their own use. It's been theorized by Brainiac 5 that what Time Trapper really may be is a sentient alternate timeline, forever in a constant battle or struggle with the main one.
Kicking off the list at number 10. Harley Sin. Constance Brand, aka Harley Sin, is the daughter of a billionaire, so you already know she's going to be trouble. Harley Sin first came around in 2016, making her first appearance back in Gang of Harleys issue 1. First of all, the look of Harley Sin, I'm here for it. She's got that Rocky Horror Picture Show vibe, she's a badass. The second issue, titled Hit 'Em Where It Hurts, we see the tattooed badass punk put in some work. She meets Harley Quinn, and during a fun little introduction panel, we see Sin say the words, "I'm the person that's going to be killing each and every one of your useless gang." So right off the hop, she's kind of a big deal. I don't know, she's in a bad mood. So this rich billionaire father I mentioned earlier, yeah, Harley Sin's father in fact is believed to be Donald Trump, or at least he was drawn and characterized to resemble him. That plus the tattoos, drug addictions, and lust for violence, you got yourselves quite the villain. And before we move on to number 9, make sure if you guys haven't done so already to go ahead and click that like button. It helps us out a bunch here at the studio, and it's this one, not this one. Unless you're a Spider-Man, then maybe it's that one. Go ahead and click that one.
Number 9, Grail. Grail is the villainous daughter of Darkseid and basically acts as an opposing force to Wonder Woman. The two women were born at exactly the same time, and it was prophesied that Grail, the daughter of Darkseid, and Myrna would bring about much destruction. As such, she was almost killed as soon as she was born, but her mother protected her. She proved almost right away in the comics that she was a new villain worthy of our time when she made easy work of the Justice League. She and Diana ended up facing off shortly thereafter, but their fight was interrupted. However, they would continue to clash during the Darkseid War, and likely will keep doing so, as Grail was basically designed to be the perfect foil for Wonder Woman. Grail was first introduced in Justice League Volume 2, Issue 40.
And number 8, Godspeed. August Hart, aka Godspeed, made his first debut not too long ago in The Flash Rebirth Volume 2, Issue 1. With a name like Godspeed, one can only assume the powers in which they'll contain. Super speed, which is also my favorite superpower on the low. Created by Joshua Williamson and Carmine Di Giandomenico, sorry if I butchered that name, I tried 7 times. Godspeed stands out from the rest of the speedsters because of one badass reason. He can separate speedsters from the Speed Force. Now if you watch the CW's Arrowverse, you know what I'm talking about already. August Hart was also a detective, a former partner of Barry Allen, to be frank. And then along comes a force storm in Central City, and all of a sudden you have these godlike powers. Pretty ideal powers for a hero, and also a villain. That's right, as you would have guessed by clicking this video, he doubles as a villain on the low. So he became the Flash's partner while secretly becoming Godspeed the villain. Not cool, dude. Why'd the villain move though? Well, when August's brother was murdered by a criminal, he was released due to insubstantial evidence. So August decides to confront the Black Hole organization after they had stolen property from Star Labs. He sees their symbol that resembles one at his brother's crime scene. Interesting. So while confronting him, that's when the Speed Force lightning strikes. I feel like if I was a speedster, I would just be like Quicksilver, right? Hang out in the basement, play some stolen video games. Is it really that hard to just chill out? I know you're angry, but like, it's all good. Speed walk it off.
Number 7. Giganta. You expect Giganta to be strong, of course, considering she is a gigantic woman, but I also feel like she's a villain that is more often than not forgotten by people. So while you might expect the strength to come along with her, you just wouldn't really expect her at all most days. Dora Azul was attempting to cure her rare blood disease that she was born with by experimenting on herself. Her mad scientist ways caused her to end up in a conflict with Wonder Woman and later caused her to also become the villain she is today. In the original continuity of New Earth, Doris abducted the body of a strong woman named Olga, putting her own consciousness into that body and gaining the ability to grow in size when her plot to steal Wonder Woman's body had failed her.
Number 6. Automatopoeia. Now I personally love a good automatopoeia, but hey, I will take a bad one every now and then, and that is exactly what this villain is. He is a serial killer that specifically targets non-powered heroes, and he is so aptly named because he imitates the noises around him, such as his gunfire or the dripping water. He is also seen to be surprisingly durable for a human, able to take 6 arrows without slowing him down, and drop at least 7 stories and just keep on running. Now this highly trained villain is one of the most clever out there, not only attacking Oliver Queen's son Connor, but fooling Batman so much that he reveals his own identity. And also in true villain fashion, he messed with Batman even further by killing his fiancée Silver St. Cloud, slitting her throat while imitating the sound Batman's utility belt makes.
Number 5. Punchline. Punchline is a newer villain on the scene and as such has definitely been underestimated. But honestly, it's this attitude that only serves to fuel Punchline's desire to prove that she is actually worthy of all of that hype. As far as we know, she is like Joker, a non-powered human being. Punchline typically fights with small stiletto blades, and despite only being in a few issues so far, she has managed to slit Harley Quinn's throat and create her own specific brew of Joker venom just for Batman, which has succeeded in making him go pretty crazy recently. Imagining Alfred is still alive and still on his communique systems, despite the fact that, you know, he's very dead.
Number 4. Amazo. A super deadly android designed by the insane in the membrane scientist Professor Ivo that acts as an enemy to the Justice League. Thanks to its synthetic body, Amazo is capable of replicating anything about a person in its general vicinity, including their powers and skills, so you can probably understand why this android is so powerful and so dangerous. Amazo has been shown duplicating the powers and skills of Superman, Green Lantern, Zatanna, Black Canary, Elongated Man, and so many more, meaning his arsenal of powers to choose from is absolutely ridiculous. Not only that, he also has the ability to temporarily negate the powers of the hero that he's mimicking. So, for example, he could strip Superman of his powers for a finite amount of time and just pummel him into the dirt. That is absolutely insane if you ask me, and that is why he is on this list today.
Number 3. Harley Quinn. In Batman the Animated Series, Harley Quinn unintentionally pissed off the Joker because she proved just how valuable of a partner in crime she was, and how capable she is as a villain without even the Joker's help, and has also done so with her pal Poison Ivy. Though of course Harley and Ivy just believed they had kidnapped millionaire Bruce Wayne at the time and made him take them on a shopping spree. But still, that's pretty impressive. While many also think that Harley is always moving closer to becoming more soft and more of a hero than a baddie, let's not forget when she executed one of the most villainous plots, also without the Joker, killing tons of children across Gotham with free explosives that were disguised as video games, simply because she was bored and sort of feeling lost in terms of what to do with herself. So yeah, don't underestimate Harley Quinn.
Number 2. The Reverse Flash. Eobard Thawne, one of the many speedsters that you'll find scattered throughout time and space in the DC universe. Also known as Professor Zoom, this biggest Flash fanatic to ever live is capable of basically all the things that the Flash and his Speed family can do. You know, like time travel, super speed, and electrokinesis. But what really sets him apart is his ability to completely negate another's connection to the Speed Force, effectively stripping his fellow speedsters of their powers and rendering them honestly useless. His most impressive feat though would probably be when he, you know, set the entirety of the New 52 in motion by creating the Flashpoint timeline. Almost every hero and villain dies in some gruesome death thanks to the circumstances of this new universe, and yeah, that's pretty scary if you ask me.
Number 1. Lex Luthor. Now when you boil it down, Lex Luthor is just a dude. He's just a bald dude who has a big beef with Superman. Whether that's because he doesn't like the fact that Superman's an alien, or he blames Superman for his hair loss, depending on the comics you're reading. The fact remains that his brilliant intellect puts him in the running to be one of the strongest, most powerful, and definitely most iconic Superman villains of all time. The fact that 1. Luthor is also a human who keeps one of the most superpowered heroes, Superman, on his toes, and that 2. He managed to convince the country, despite being a supervillain, to vote him in as president are both pretty impressive.
Number 10. Amanda Waller. She doesn't even have superpowers, but she is a power all on her own. Nicknamed The Wall, She is a government official who will do anything in the name of national security. I'm talking breaking the rules, killing people, even killing innocent people. She is the commander of Task Force X, aka Suicide Squad, a supervillain team that performs special operations under her command. She has a brilliant tactical mind and is ruthless and disciplined, bending supervillains to her will to get her work done, but she's not afraid to get her hands dirty. She once even uncovered Batman's secret identity. She might not be the deadliest DC villain by a pretty wide margin, but there are a whole host of DC villains that would say she's plenty deadly. It's this ability to get superpowered villains to do her dirty work that earns her this spot on our list. Number 9, Catwoman. Coming straight from the heart of Gotham City, Selina Kyle has had a varied origin, but she always ends up becoming Catwoman. In more recent years, she shows up more as a helper to Batman than as an enemy, but she is one of Batman's original villains, and for good reason. She is in peak physical condition and a nimble acrobat as well as master thief, sometimes even using literal cats to help her in her schemes. She might not have super strength or energy manipulation, but she is still a deadly foe, a skilled martial artist, stealth expert, and has considerable skill with weapons, including firearms and swords. Number 8, Cheetah. A much more intimidating cat, Cheetah has had a bit of a legacy, and there are a few different versions of the character. The most recent iteration of Cheetah is Barbara Minerva, who just recently appeared in DC's Wonder Woman 1984. A skilled archaeologist and linguist, she has a keen interest in the lost culture of the Amazons, and she actually helped Wonder Woman learn English when she first came to the United States. Dr. Minerva has made a pact with a god, transforming her into the cheetah with superhuman speed and all the deadly attributes of a feline. She battles with the inner turmoil of resisting her animalistic rage and predatory fury, and was once friends with Wonder Woman, at least in her human form. She was once busted out of jail by the crime syndicate and recruited onto their team. After a while, she led her own team known as the Menagerie, who terrorized New York from their hideout in Central Park.
Number 7, Perpetua. Perpetua is an old evil, but one that we didn't know of in the comics until 2018 when she was first introduced in Justice League Volume 4, Issue 8. Perpetua quickly became known as one of the greatest evils the universe, or multiverse really, had ever known. She was the creator basically of all things, and the mother to the Anti-Monitor, World Forger, and Over-Monitor. Billions of years ago, she was betrayed by her own children and trapped in the Source Wall, along with her devastating and deadly creatures, the Apex Predators, a vicious combination of Martians and humans. Yeah, she really old. Perpetua was the one ultimately responsible for the crisis in the DC universe, as it was her whisperings from within the Source Wall that brought them about. The energy allowed her prison to weaken, cracking a little more each time there was a crisis, which was how Perpetua planned to escape. She was eventually freed when the Source Wall broke as a result of Barbatos and the Batman Who Laughs actions, allowing her to once more wreak havoc on the world and earn back her power so she might rebuild the universe again in her own horrifying image.
Number 6, The Kindred. Making its first appearance in the Multiversity Guidebook number 1, the Kindred is this cosmic force that appeared after the Rebirth event. Created by Grant Morrison, the Kindred is a 4-part entity, and they each represent DC lore, so those 4 being the Speed Force, Magic, Cosmic Power, and Emotional Life Spectrum. So they have a handle on pretty much any angle out there. Now, this is a villain list, so this is bad news for us, or rather bad news for pretty much any world. For starters, they take all of the energy from living creatures. That's how they come together. Nice, teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work. Also tears. So off the bat, these guys are just OP. I love the look of these celestial gods though. They each have like their own color. Even if Brian Hitch wrote them into his run with the Justice League, with destruction being the driving force, this is still kind of a villain that even I'll root for. I said it, sue me, what's up?
Number 5, Punchline. So Punchline has to be one of my favorite of the newest villains we've seen. I didn't want to like her when she was announced, especially as I thought she was going to be like some new younger version of Harley Quinn, which I didn't really think that we needed. But then I met Punchline, and I gotta say, I like Alexis. She's okay by me. Punchline's real name is Alexis K, and we learned her backstory in the Joker 80th Anniversary Special. She sought out the Joker believing that his ideology matched or at least suited her own. She has displayed some pretty sweet chemistry and toxicology skills, making Batman his own special version of the Joker venom. How nice. Which tormented him through most of the Joker War story, and has proven how deadly she can be with her stilettos when she managed to land a life-threatening hit on Harley Quinn. I really hope we get more Punchline in the near future. I was pleasantly surprised by how different and interesting she is in comparison to Harley Quinn, and I also just love her character design. Punchline first appeared in Batman Volume 3 in issue 89.
Number 4, Eradicator 2. With that name alone, oh boy, you already know what's coming. The Eradicator 2 was created, of course, after DC's Rebirth with the absence of the original Eradicator. Another big bad version was bound to show up. I mean, we expected it. So of course, this is the newer version of Eradicator from the 80s comics. But the best part is that he still has the 80s look. He's got the retro, badass glasses, which are such a nice touch, by the way. Just by looking at this guy, you can tell he's the coolest. Created by General Zod, this AI ended up taking on the physicalities of Superman, hence the everything about him. So when this badass AI is close to a yellow sun, he gets powered up real good. I'm talking the usual super strength, stamina, flight, speed, and he's basically invincible. A cool but scary power that he also obtains is that of energy manipulation, because he's made of course, pure energy. Eradicator wasn't used too much, but I feel like Eradicator 2, since his first new appearance in Superman Volume 4 Issue 2, at the very end we see his rebirth, and it's beautiful. Once the Kryptonian gene is detected back on the Fortress of Solitude, energy forms all around the room. There's an ID badge, some glasses, and then bam, all this mixed into one. You get this bright pop, and his opening line being, "We are here, we will save you too, Kal-El." And it's sick. He's like basically Terminator with a cape. He's got the look, there's this energy coming from him. I would love to see this guy go head to head with Henry Cavill. I mean, maybe we'll get more of a dark alternate version with the Snyder cut of the Justice League, but fine, that'll have to do in the meantime. For now.
Number 3, Clown Hunter. Clown Hunter is just a kid who stepped up to the plate when it came to taking back Gotham during the Joker War. Seeing his neighborhood being ravaged and attacked by the Joker gang, and having lost his parents to the Joker, he was inspired to start cracking skulls, which is exactly what he did, defending the innocent with a baseball bat with a batarang attached to it, to kill any clowns that crossed his path. His true name is Bao Pham, and at the end of the event, he was confronted by Batman himself, who suggested that he seek help and speak to a therapist. He also offered to mentor Clown Hunter, but warned him that he would not tolerate the teenage Bao killing anyone else, no matter their crime. Clown Hunter seemed interested in getting help, but only after his work was done. Clown Hunter first appeared in issue 96 of 2016's Batman.
Number 2, the Batman Who Laughs. Bruce Wayne, but from Earth 22, is a touch different than the one that we know best. The Dark Universe is a very special and very vast place filled with alternate versions of characters, but one of the most notable has to be the Batman Who Laughs. Making his first appearance in Dark Days, The Casting, this Bruce Wayne has, well, of course, similar origins that we're familiar with. Parents were murdered, became a crime-fighting bat, protects Gotham, all the good stuff. But this Joker changed his path up. Joker began murdering everybody in Gotham. He bombed a hospital and then shot the parents of the kids. Like, he's twisted, and he's also dying at the same time. He's dying from the chemicals that made him become the Joker in the first place. So of course he wanted to take everybody out with him. So when Batman stepped in and killed him by breaking his neck, the toxins from the Joker were inhaled by poor Batsy, causing this to happen. So a day later, he's joined by Batgirl, Nightwing, Red Hood, Red Robin, who were training in the Batcave, and then Batman then shot all of them. And then this is just the beginning. This insane clown Batsy is terrifying and entertaining in all of the right ways.
Number 1, Ghostmaker. We don't know a lot about Ghostmaker yet. He first appeared in Volume 3 of Batman, the current run, in issue 100 as a mysterious figure. And so far, he stayed that way. We'll likely see more of him in issue 103, but so far we know he's not as new as he might appear. In fact, in Batman issue 102, Batman seems to recognize him, leading many to speculate as to which old rival Ghostmaker's true identity could actually be. We do know that he's here to challenge Batman for Gotham and to provide the people with an alternate option when it comes to choosing their hero for their city. He also comes with a ton of tech, and at this point is probably going to quickly end up being better equipped than Batman himself when it comes to gadgets, as Bruce just lost all of his fortune to Lucius Fox. Well, he gave it away, that is. And Lucius is out of the Batman game. Bruce is on his own this time around when it comes to equipping himself, and he only has his own ingenuity and the help of the Bat fam to back him up.
Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Talia al Ghul. She's the daughter of Ra's al Ghul, the leader of the League of Assassins, and she's constantly being torn between her father and the Caped Crusader himself. Now, in Batman's Son of the Demon, the name should tip you off as to what happens. But by the end of the story, Talia ended up giving birth to a child, and Batman was the father. Meet Damian Wayne. He was perfect. I mean, genetically speaking, of course. He was born from an artificial womb, and he was supposed to join the League of Assassins and be a great warrior. That was the plan. You know, having a powerful skill set in martial arts before he was even a teenager, Talia al Ghul explained who he was and left him with his father, Batman. Now, she was hoping that this would cause problems for Bruce Wayne and that this would disrupt Batman's work. You know, getting the little one to spy on Batman and stir up some drama with Tim Drake in the meantime. He was actually quite eager to replace Tim Drake as Batman's wingman. So troubled Damian Wayne grabs another Robin costume, added some of that League of Assassins gear he was used to, and then he took out the villain Spook. In a rather dark way, too. The guy's wild. At one point, he ended up sucker punching Tim Drake off of a T-Rex model. Sometimes those villain genes just get carried down no matter how the kid gets born. And before we continue on with this list of bad moms, guys, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up if you want. You should, because it really helps out our studio quite a bit. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for your continuous support. Now let's get back to this video. Number 9, Superwoman, Earth 3. She made her comic book debut not too long ago in Justice League Volume 2, Issue 23. Lois Lane of Earth 3, that is an Amazon native and a member of the crime syndicate. Now, she was in a relationship with her teammate Ultraman, but that relationship was pretty toxic. So she veered off and had an affair with another teammate, Owlman. And then she also had another affair, but this time with Alexander Luthor. So she had this handy little tool that helped her get all these side romances in the works. She had the lasso of submission, which enslaves others to her will. So it was only a matter of time before she got pregnant with one of these guys. Now, supposedly, the child was Ultraman's. But, she told Owlman that it was his. She was manipulating both men. Her plan was much deeper though. When the Injustice League had attacked, they freed the prisoner Mazaz, who Superman then revealed was the true father all along. So yeah, she manipulated the Syndicate into bringing him back as a prisoner, where she helped him go against Black Adam and Bizarro. And honestly, this whole love triangle, or love hexagon, is definitely Bizarro. That's the word I would use for it. Number 8, Catwoman. Selina Kyle first appeared in comics way back in 1940 in Batman issue 1. She's had a pretty on and off complicated relationship with Batman, so it was just a matter of time before the two got really close. In Huntress issue 1, the Huntress of course is introduced as Helena Bartolini, but there was another Huntress in the comics as well, and she was the daughter of Bruce and Selina. She was introduced to readers in Huntress volume 3, issue 1. Now this all happened on Earth 2 as well. See, Helena is a lawyer for Cranston, Grayson, and Wayne, but the daughter of Batman and Catwoman. So she's got a few tricks up her sleeve as well. When she was only 19 years old, her mother, who used to be Catwoman, passed away in a tragic mishap, no thanks to this henchman named Silky Cernak. He was the reason behind a photo that came up, and it showed Selina Kyle as Catwoman attacking a police officer. So of course Helena was pretty upset, and she wanted to get even. They're making her mom look bad. So she took a page out of her parents' book and became the Huntress. Now she went after Silky Smooth Cernak and then got him arrested, and her mother wasn't even as bad as she thought, because the photo, it was tampered with. It wasn't even a legit photo. But she ended up keeping the suit and attitude, and eventually wound up on the Justice Society of America. And also, recently this year, readers got their first look at Jim Lee's variant cover for Batman and Catwoman issue 4, where Helena Wayne stands front and center, and in this version, she looks really, really cool. If you haven't been reading that run, you're missing out. And coming in at number 7, Volthoom, Earth 15. Making his first appearance in Green Lantern Annual Volume 5, Issue 1 back in 2012, also known as the First Lantern. So like I said, he's from the future on Earth 15 in the year 3079, and after his world was on the brink of destruction, him and his mother used the newly discovered emotional electromagnetic spectrum, which is a multiversal force powered by all life in the multiverse. Then they used this power to create the Travel Lantern, and then Volthoom left to find safety while his mother stayed behind and unfortunately, in superhero fashion, died by being crushed by a building right as he left. So he traveled for weeks through space and time in desperate hopes to find something to save his home world. So he goes to Earth 17 and uses the spectrum to resurrect plant life. Cool, not much more to do here, let's go next. He tries Earth 47, then they use the spectrum to create nice music. Cool. And next, he went to Earth 3, where he met a sorcerer named Mordu, in which he creates a power ring out of a piece of his soul. And that ring, of course, being called the Ring of Voltum. He finally found Earth 0, where he acted as the law and order. Eventually, Voltum's mind was corrupted from the spectrum, and he becomes insane and tries to kill the Malthusians, who had created a great heart battery beforehand. Not cool, Voltum. More like not cool Tomb. Nah, I tried. And number 6, Daniel West, Reverse Flash. Making his first appearance in the Flash Volume 40, Issue 0, Daniel West is a classic speedster. His costume is the first thing you notice when looking at this version of the Reverse Flash. His suit is made partially from the monorail that he crashed into, so it acts like an armor around him, which is super cool looking. It was merged to him. So after an accident where you get super speed, becoming a supervillain isn't too hard of a lane to slip into, especially when your mother dies while giving birth to you and your father is an aggressive alcoholic. Yeah, Daniel's upbringing is super tragic, so he uses the Speed Force in attempts to go back in time and prevent this from happening at all costs. So if anybody has to die in the meantime, so be it. His goal is to take out other speedsters and use their Speed Force to help him achieve his goal. Sad times indeed. Number 5, William Cobb, the Talon. He made his comic book debut in 2011 back in Batman Volume 2, Issue 2, and the Talon is an assassin for the Court of Owls, who claims to have killed several Wayne family members, including Bruce Wayne's great-great-grandfather, Alan Wayne. Not a bad resume. He began his early days juggling baseballs on the street just to get by, and after his father had passed away tragically while building a bridge for Cameron Kane, he began his early days juggling baseballs on the street just to get by, after his father had passed away tragically while building a bridge for Cameron Kane. So he would earn some money and then sneak it into his mother's purse. What a gem. And then one day somebody was watching his act and then got pickpocketed. So William Cobb noticed and hucked one of these baseballs at him, saving the day. The man offered him a job at a circus as a thank you. So he started using knives instead of baseballs to amp up the act, keep it fresh, and eventually met his love, Amelia, back when he returned to Gotham. Now he was a celebrity though. Amelia's father didn't like the two in love, so he told William to beat it. Amelia at this time was actually pregnant. Ruh-roh. So Cobb joined the Court of Owls and became one of the Talons, and went back to Amelia's house to kidnap his own son. His son ends up becoming the Gray Son of Gotham, John Grayson's father. Number 4, Oblivion. Making his first appearance in Green Lantern New Guardians Annual Issue 2 back in 2014, Oblivion is made of Kyle Rayner's rage, fear, and anxiety. He's the physical form of all of those traits and even believes himself to be Kyle Rayner. He stayed in his apartment and even tricked Carol into thinking that he was the real deal. So he has powers that allow him to shapeshift, teleport, he can project vast amounts of energy that match a white lantern, and he can also create illusions of people and objects. So one day Oblivion teleported Carol and himself to Arizona, where he used his powers to alter all the people in the buildings there. He's kind of annoying like that, Number 3, Gotham Girl, aka Claire Clover. She made her debut in DCU Rebirth Issue 1 in 2016. Her and her brother Hank both traded in years of their lives for superpowers. So they can either live 2 years at Superman's level, or live a few hours with godlike levels, which is really interesting. If you had this power, which way would you go? Let us know in the comments, because I'm curious. So Batman ended up taking Claire and Hank under his wing, but unfortunately, Psycho Pirate's mind manipulation ended up getting the better of him. Hank ended up using all of his life force just to defeat the Justice League. After his death, Claire wasn't doing too well. Batman even told her his real identity and how he sometimes likes to talk to his dead mom as well. How lovely, what a nice little bonding moment. Now, by the name of this list, you won't be too shocked to hear that she had also been secretly working with Bane to break Batman on a psychological level. Not cool. And number 2, the Court of Owls. I mentioned them earlier, so I figured since they're gonna be in the new Robert Pattinson Batman flick coming out in 2022, they're worth a bigger mention. So since the New 52, the Court of Owls have picked up steam. Created by Scott Snyder, this new secret society looks as cool as they are. They're an ancient group that has been secretly controlling Gotham for a while. Like a while. They even go back to some early Bruce Wayne days, hence them being part of the Matt Reeves Batman plot coming up. Their top assassin, of course, being the guy I mentioned earlier, Talon. So he ended up attacking him, and then Bruce decided to do some detective work, discovering the secret society. So he finds out that the Court of Owls actually has secret headquarters in every building made by the Wayne Trust. Sneaky, sneaky. Gotta love secret cults. And finally, number 1, Mr. Bloom. One of the coolest looking guys on this list, Mr. Bloom made his debut in 2015 in Batman Volume 2, issue 43. He began his journey by stealing high-tech seeds. Yep, you heard me, I said seeds. Makes sense why he's got the flower on his face. It goes well with the terrifying Slender Man look. I wonder what it smells like. Probably death or daffodils, one of the two. So after he took these super seeds, he got some superpowers, super strength, elasticity, hence the lankiness, and he can project flames and ice from his hands. Pretty neat. So he decides to give these seeds to a select few who desire superpowers. They only cost their life. I think next year for Halloween, I'm gonna go as Mr. Bloom. Either him or Orlando Bloom. One of the Blooms for sure, I'm just not sure which one, you know? Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Erica Manson, aka Marionette. She made her comic book debut just 2 years ago in Doomsday Clock issue 1. Her and her father moved to the United States and opened up a puppet shop across the street from Maze Glass, which eventually led her to meet Marcos Maze, who would soon become her husband, but I'll get into that a little bit later. They started, of course, as best friends, while Marco's stepfather thought that she was a bad influence. Ooh, so Marco ended up saving Erica from some bullies. And Erica's father committed suicide after corrupt police officers were extorting money out of him at his puppet shop. Now, of course, this already sounds like a villain origin story, but it gets worse. So Erica ended up getting payback on the policeman while, of course, becoming the alternate persona, Marionette, with her trusty lover sidekick, Mime, aka Marcos Maze, who I mentioned earlier. I love this duo, honestly. Like, the vibe reminds me of, like, from Baby Driver, where you have Buddy and Darling. A lot of love and violence, just a hot mix. And before we head over to number 9, guys, if you could just give this video a thumbs up and like this video, it goes a long way over here at the studio. You guys rock, thank you. Now back to some more villains. And number 9, the Underbroker, not to be confused with the Underminer from Incredibles. So Harlan Graves, aka the Underbroker, is a businessman and lawyer located in, of course, Gotham City, who runs a bank for criminals. The Underbroker, of course, wears a fancy suit and a mask. I mean, he looks ready to go to the club, and he also looks ready to crunch some numbers. Love the red and black combo. Slick. He's a broker for criminals, so he would help them store cash in hedge funds. And he's actually so good at his job that the Caped Crusader doesn't even know about his secret organization he calls the Underbrokerage. Great name. He actually helped Catwoman transfer Batman's money to her account, but it was later revealed that he was just getting the account for the Joker. Super smart, super evil, and super handsome. Gotta love it. He made his debut in Batman Volume 3, issue 92. So if you want to check him out for yourself, you know where to look. And number 8, Barbados. Also referred to as the Bat God, not Rap God. And he resides in the dark multiverse. So, the World Forger, of course, was set to watch over the vast universes, and while some of them held up, there are just some worlds that were just naturally unstable. So, what next? Well, they send a dragon named Barbados to destroy it. That way the energy can then return to the Forge. Now, sometimes you like your job a little bit too much, and this was the case for the Bat God. See, he ended up killing his master and then had a real taste for destruction, thus corrupting the Forge of Worlds. So now, with Barbados not destroying these worlds and sending that energy back, these worlds ended up becoming part of the Dark Universe. His journey begins with Dark Days, the Casting, issue 1.
Number 7, Punchline. Also called Alexis K, she is the Joker's new right-hand woman, as Harley has a lot going on right now and the two aren't really on speaking terms. She was a student at Snyder College and encountered the Joker while on a field trip to a TV studio. Joker hijacked the studio and Alexis was forced at gunpoint to act as the newsreader, delivering Joker's message to the citizens of Gotham. After this encounter, she became obsessed, starting a podcast about the Joker and poisoning the people around her to try and get his attention. She eventually kills her college dean, proving herself to the Joker, who taught her how to create a modified form of his Joker venom. Link in the script there. She goes on to help Joker in his war against Batman, eventually having an epic showdown against Harley Quinn and Batman. She wields a couple of daggers and holds her own well against Catwoman and Harley. Number 6, Silver Banshee. First appearing in Action Comics number 595, Silver Banshee is a villain with sonic powers who frequently goes up against Superman. She was once insanely powerful, but has sort of been dumbed down a bit over the years, It's just how it goes with these supervillains sometimes. But in her youth, she was dragged into the netherworld during a supernatural conflict as family stuff and granted superpowers by a creature called the Crone. She is initially controlled by the powers like a curse, but later overcomes it with the help of Supergirl. They become fast friends and get to know each other pretty well. The two later hang out in a bar together and it's totally lit. They're having a great time until her dad, Black Banshee, shows up. Luckily, the two of them are able to defeat Black Banshee together. Silver Banshee is known for her ability to learn language instantly, and more importantly, this crazy power to just like make people die by saying their name. It's sort of like the Black Canary's canary cry, except the Banshee version, and it instantly kills you. Number 5. Blackfire. Blackfire is the older sister of Starfire from the Teen Titans. She often appears as an adversary of the Titans and is extremely powerful, outmatching the already astounding Starfire in battle. She can absorb ultraviolet radiation and transform it into deadly bolts she calls black bolts, and can even change radiation into energy, giving her superhuman strength and endurance. She is especially powerful, capable of interstellar travel and flight in space. Kind of the same thing. She appears in Red Hood and the Outlaws number 11, where she fights alongside her sister and takes down the Blight after they capture Roy Harper. It's an epic team up and a great reunion for the two sisters. Number 4. Mary, Queen of Blood. Mary Seward is the Queen of Blood, appearing in House of Mystery number 290 in 1981. She once had a lover named Andrew Bennett, a decorated nobleman who was bitten and turned into a vampire. Mary begged Andrew to bite her as well, hoping that the two could spend eternity together. However, Andrew resists the vampiric bloodlust while Mary embraces it and becomes a ruthless killer. She forms a cult called the Blood Red Moon, and Andrew hunts her across the centuries trying to stop her. She once turned an entire temple of monks into vampires, but they rather impressively resist the bloodlust through mindfulness and meditation. She has a crazy host of powerful abilities, including psychokinesis, transformation, regeneration, superhuman strength, not to mention immortality. As long as she has a steady supply of blood, she is extremely powerful, and I'm sure it's easy for her to get more. Number 3. Killer Frost. Killer Frost is just a classic deadly female villain, an icy-hearted femme fatale who will literally suck the life out of you in a heartless attack. There have been multiple iterations of Frost, always iconic and always super powerful, having once even sold her soul to become more powerful. She has been kidnapped and forced to work on the Suicide Squad, and once even worked alongside Batman. Caitlin Snow is the newest Frost, a scientist who is tricked by Hive and made to die in a staged accident, but she instead survives and gains her ice-based powers. She is not made of ice, but instead generates organic ice-like cells that make up her entire genetic makeup. She is a heat vampire, absorbing the body heat of others to kill them. Number 2. Enchantress. Also known as June Moon, Enchantress gained her powers from an immensely powerful being and almost immediately winds up battling against Supergirl. She later joins the Suicide Squad as Amanda Waller agrees to help her control her evil Enchantress side. She can manipulate energy, heal, and even teleport. She once took on Wonder Woman, Cyborg, and Superman all at once, and has defeated other villains as well. Her powers have gotten kind of erratic and unpredictable since June Moon and Enchantress became separated from one another, but she has still demonstrated some impressive raw power in her villainous career. She is capable of flight, necromancy, and possession, elemental control, and even resurrection, but only if the corpse is fresh. If it's not though, she can always use the necromancy. Number 1. Evil Supergirl. Lex Luthor had an evil scheme that basically caused all of this. He created a black kryptonite energy ray, which he used on Supergirl, hoping to corrupt her. Instead though, the ray generated a second dark version of Supergirl. This dark version had similar memories and experiences, but believed that she was sent to Earth to kill Superman. And as you can imagine, she's crazy powerful. She goes on a rampage using her Kryptonian powers, causing tons of damage, and even taking down Black Canary and the Flash before finally facing off in an epic battle with Superman and Wonder Woman. Evil Supergirl is likely one of the most powerful villains ever, and it's actually Wonder Woman that brings her down in the end, catching both versions of Supergirl in her lasso and merging them together back into one.
Coming in at number 10, we have Eclipso, the alleged former Wrath of God. A supernatural agent of chaos with his face permanently in the shade of a constant eclipse, Eclipso claimed to be the one who carried out the biblical flood of Noah's Ark, and that he was replaced in his position as the physical embodiment of God's wrath by the Spectre, because Eclipso was just too violent and angry for the role. Older than almost every other being on Earth, Eclipso has fought many heroes over the years, and even though he no longer possesses the power of a full god, he is still an extremely dangerous magical being, and who knows what he'll do next to try and regain his power. Coming in at number 9, we have Starro the Conqueror, specifically the version seen in James Gunn's 2021 film, The Suicide Squad. Found by American astronauts during the early days of the Cold War merely drifting through space, Starro was imprisoned and tortured for 30 years by the American government on the island Corto Maltese when it was discovered that Starro possessed incredible telepathic mind control powers that the government seek to learn how to weaponize. Although he eventually had to be taken down by the Suicide Squad when his anger at being imprisoned caused him to go on a rampage, Starro's story wound up being a tragic one, as his sad last words were, "I was happy, floating, staring at the stars." Rest in peace, Starro. Hopefully there's lots of stars to look at in big, mysterious kaiju heaven. Coming in at number 8, we have the Lord of Chaos, Dominus. An enemy of Superman's, Dominus was originally a peaceful magic user on his alien homeworld, who soon became jealous when the woman he loved ascended past him and became the magical leader of their planet. Filled with envy and rage, Dominus was imprisoned in the Phantom Zone as punishment for attempting to betray his love, and over the course of his long imprisonment, Dominus soon learned to embrace the chaos of magic and managed to free himself through a gateway in Superman's Fortress of Solitude. With strength to rival the Man of Steel himself and magical abilities that can completely distort reality, Dominus is one of the most unpredictable and dangerous magic wielders in the entire DC universe.
Number 7, Superboy Prime. Just because Superman can't take Darkseid alone doesn't mean that another version of the character couldn't stand a fighting chance. Superboy Prime, or Superman Prime as he is often referred to now, might not have the physical strength, but it could be possible that he could manipulate reality to make Darkseid weaker, or even cause him to just not exist. How? With just a punch. There was a time in the comics where Superboy Prime was shown to be so strong that he punched reality, splintering it and in essence reshaping it. If Superboy Prime has the power to punch retcons into existence, what can't he do?
Number 7, Mephisto. Within the Marvel Universe, Mephisto is, for all intents and purposes, the devil. He isn't actually. Technically, he is a demonic hell lord who rules over his own hell-like dimension and enjoys stealing people's souls by tricking them, and he does that by pretending he is the actual devil, playing on people's fears, so basically, he's the devil. While Mephisto is within his dimension, which he calls hell, he is immortal, omniscient, and impossible to destroy. It's only when he ventures into other realms that he can be defeated, but doing so just kind of returns him back to his own dimension. He has been a major player in the Marvel Universe since his creation and has been either a key or supporting player for many major events. He was the Snake in the old Adam and Eve story. He was directly responsible for the creation of Ghost Rider. He's infamously erased the history of Peter Parker and Mary Jane's marriage in order to save Aunt May's life. I mean, he even popped up a hotel out of the ground in Las Vegas that manipulated the citizens and let him take their souls. He has been defeated and outmaneuvered multiple times, but he has never permanently been stopped.
Number 6, Horde. The Horde are another insectoid alien race that are so cosmic it actually hurts me. They're basically the race that is meant to cosmically balance out the Celestials. They are agents of the Fulcrum along with the Celestials and Watchers, and the Fulcrum, for those who are not familiar with this term, basically represents the balance of the cosmos. In essence, Marvel's God. The Fulcrum is actually known by another name that many may more commonly recognize from Marvel Comics, the One Above All. Yeah, so like I said, basically God. The Horde are therefore just made to be a force of destruction to counter the Celestials' force of creation in the universe. Why do they look like insects? Probably because it's just creepier that way. Why did they choose to corrupt the Celestials? Because they could. I'm not really sure how all that factors into the Fulcrum's plans, or if it does at all, but it's a thing that happened at least, so hey, there's that. Number 5. Raquel. I never know how to say this name. Raquel isn't a strange cosmic villain in the sense of her appearance or role, but more is mentioned here because she suddenly popped up in the comics after years of being dead, which is what makes her kinda weird. It had been so long that her return was mostly met with confusion from fans at that point because many who were reading her reappearance didn't actually know who the heck she was. Even I had to do some digging to fully understand the importance of just who this character is. Raquel was once one of the rulers of the Skrull Empire. Unlike Varanki, who was made queen after the Skrulls' homeworld fell, and actually who a lot of people thought I think Raquel was at first, Raquel was actually the Skrull Empress, back when the homeworld was still around and doing well. Raquel first appeared back in 1979 and would perish in the comics in issue 257 of Fantastic Four in 1983, only a few short years later. She returned only a few short years ago from now though, so like it's 2023 now. I think she reappeared back in like 2020 or something like that, or 2021 in the Empire event, where she was revealed to be Hulkling's grandmother who survived the destruction of Tarnax 4, and who had been working behind the scenes ever since undercover as a Kree pursuer while putting into motion a plan to make her grandson ruler of the United Skrull and Kree empires. Which is like, what? That was me when I found all that out. Number 4. Annihilus. Annihilus is weird in the most comic book way for a villain. He hails from the Negative Zone and is also insectoid in appearance, like so many others on our list. Annihilus basically has a cosmic magic wand, if you will, known as the Cosmic Control Rod, that he used in his attempt to take over the Negative Zone. In more recent appearances, however, Annihilus actually usually chooses to wear this rod as sort of a protective accessory, using it to protect him against naturally occurring dangers such as aging, heat, and cold, in addition to gaining the ability to fly through space. I mean, at the end of the day, Annihilus is like kind of an insect, so he needs to be protected against those things. He also initially became a villain of the Fantastic Four because they borrowed the Cosmic Rod to help treat the Invisible Woman during her pregnancy. Though admittedly, they did return the Cosmic Rod, so I don't know why Annihilus is so angry. I guess if you need something to live though, you'd be like, hey, don't just take that. Number 3. Galactus. When you think about it, Galactus is a pretty weird villain. He's basically a giant man who can fly through the vacuum of space, although he usually prefers to do so from within his own even more enormous spaceship, because I guess he likes having his things with him, who wears a very large hat, has much hunger, and as a result, basically eats planets. Oh, and he's also basically a universal constant, meaning that without his existence, the universe is kind of thrown off balance. Despite being an antagonist, you also kind of need him to exist, or at least, I mean, you used to need him. I don't really know what's happening with that. Recently, Galactus got dusted in a fight involving the Black Winter and Thor, and the universe still seems to be existing without too much disruption right now. But even that is weird, because if we established how Galactus is basically a necessary evil earlier, you'd think his death would cause things to get pretty wonky pretty quickly. Although, to be fair to Donny Cates' current Thor series, that's likely coming in due time, because it was kind of hinted at that, yeah, killing Galactus may have been a bad move. Number 2. Impossible Man. Impossible Man is one of my all-time favorite weirdos from the cosmic realm of Marvel Comics. He's kind of like Marvel's equivalent of DC's fifth-dimensional imp, Mr. Mxyzptlk. Impossible Man hails from the planet Pop-Up and is known as a Pop-Upian. He is often depicted as being more a misguided villain than a malicious one. For the most part, he gets into trouble with heroes because of a misunderstanding or because of kind of his love for pranking. Like Mr. Mixie, he is sometimes an ally to the heroes who he has also been known to torment, and is known for being pretty intensely powerful, I'd say, having molecular manipulation powers which allow him to change his form, shapeshift, and even duplicate himself. Also, he's got a very goofy design that honestly reminds me of a cross between Mr. Mixie and the Coneheads, and I love it. Number 1. Xemnu. Definitely one of the weirdest weirdos out there for me. Even his name sounds so cosmically weird and fantastic. Xemnu. Reminds me of Xanadu, although not at all related to that 80s Olivia Newton-John fantasy musical classic, to clarify. Sadly, I wish Xemnu was Xanadu themed villain. What would that even be like? I don't know. I'm here for it. Xemnu with like some roller skates on. Xemnu is a Hulk villain. He was an alien cyborg prisoner who escaped from exile only to crash land on Earth. Already that sounds pretty wild. But hey, it gets weirder. Xemnu initially hoped to control the minds of the people of Earth and get them to build him a new spaceship, one that was so powerful that its launch would actually in essence destroy Earth. Xemnu is a psionic being who can hypnotize his victims and control their minds. He can also use hope hosts to kind of heal himself, in essence transforming their body into his until there's nothing resembling them or their mind left. Even stranger, Xemnu was technically the first character to be known as the Hulk before the creation of the Bruce Banner turned green giant version of the character, which is even weirder to think about. Xemnu's OG Hulk.
Number 10, the Kingpin. The way that the Ultimate Universe handles Wilson Fisk is pretty close to how he is in the main 616 universe. He is a kingpin of crime who uses fear and money to avoid the consequences of his criminal actions. His activities are an open secret, but no one can get enough evidence together to actually stop him. Sure, he loses some fights over the course of his time in the comics, but he is unstoppable in a much more realistic and kind of depressing way because of the corruption that he has sown into the city. After obtaining a magical Egyptian relic known as the Zodiac Key, he found that without even having to use the item, it caused enough fear that he could run the city's crime almost unopposed. In a move that is an undeniable win on Fisk's part, he bought the merchandise rights to Spider-Man's likeness, meaning that he was making massive amounts of money off of his enemy. He was eventually arrested after trying to have the Ultimate Moon Knight killed, but when the Ultimatum wave washed away much of New York, all of the records of his crime were destroyed in the disaster, and he was able to go free. He was permanently stopped when he was thrown out of a window by Mysterio, though. Number 9, Sabretooth. Earth 1610's Victor Creed is quite similar to the original version, with him being a bit of a psycho with claws, heightened senses, and a healing factor. He believed that humans were more cruel than less evolved animals, and therefore, mutants should be even worse. He became a ruthless killer who delighted in causing his victims as much pain as possible before he was eventually recruited to the Weapon X program. After Wolverine left the program, Sabretooth was given similar, though more extensive, adamantium upgrades, and he was sent to retrieve Wolverine. From that point on in his history, Sabretooth came into frequent conflict with the X-Men, the Ultimates, and various random heroes of the Ultimate Universe. He soon joined the Ultimate version of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, the Brotherhood of Mutant Superiority, being a consistent thorn in Wolverine's side. Sabretooth makes this list despite the fact that he is frequently apprehended or defeated because of his incredible healing factor. He has been shot, stabbed, and even decapitated, and yet he always comes back. So, though he can be defeated, he can only ever be stopped on a temporary basis. Number 8, Dr. Octopus. Doc Ock's origin is pretty much the same as his original. He gets in a lab accident that makes him able to control his metal arms telepathically, and he uses those arms to do crime. However, he is different from the classic Ock in a few ways. This version of Octavius is so linked to his arms that he can control them even when he is separated from them, such as in Ultimate Spider-Man number 54, when he summoned his arms with his mind and used them to escape prison. After Spider-Man defeated him again, Nick Fury had Ock's arms destroyed in molten steel, thinking that would stop Ock once and for all. But we found out that there was another difference between this Ock and the original. He was actually a mutant, with powers similar to Magneto's. He hadn't been controlling the arms, he had been controlling the metal in the arms. He then used this mutant ability to cause metal in the building to form together new arms for himself, and he fought Spider-Man and Spider-Woman in a cyclone of flying shards of metal. So, while the old Ock could be stopped by removing his arms, this Ock has way more ways to come back from a loss, and can't be stopped for long. That is, until Green Goblin beat him to death. But hey, that's why he's so low on the list. Number 7, Venom. Ultimate Venom is not an alien symbiote, but a genetically engineered suit developed by Eddie Brock and Peter Parker's dads. When Peter used the symbiote to get his black suit, Eddie became jealous and fused with a sample of the symbiote that was in storage. This caused him to become Venom. While in Venom form, he has an insatiable hunger and has to consume people at a regular rate in order to not be consumed from within the suit. He has all of the classic Venom's powers, like the strength, the healing, the ability to override Peter's spider sense, but unlike the classic Venom, he doesn't have the same level of weakness to sonics and fire. Electricity is his weakness, but his savagery makes him even more dangerous than the original Venom. He became even more powerful when he absorbed the Carnage symbiote, becoming even bigger and monstrous than before.
And at 6, Yelena Belova. Yelena Belova, a skilled super spy molded to surpass her idol Black Widow, Widow, Natasha Romanoff, in the Red Room Academy, faced a harsh lesson from Romanoff herself, revealing the dark reality of being a spy devoid of glory or heroism. This experience led Belova to break away from her masters and forge her own path, and initially while working as a corrupt SHIELD agent, Belova suffered grave injuries in the Savage Land and was transformed into a super adaptoid by AIM, in return for attacking the Avengers. That's where the whole evil thing comes in. That's where she's the villain. She remained involved with AIM after this, even serving as the Minister of State in Barbuda. Ultimately, Belova met her demise in a conflict between AIM and SHIELD's Avengers, but the Red Room, known for cloning its prominent agents like Romanoff and Belova, had their operations disrupted by Romanoff, but still managed to fully restore Belova to life through a clone infused with her memories. I don't know how they got her memories if she was dead, but that's aside the point. I'm not going to question it, it's comics. So, reclaiming control over her life, Belova then became an ally to Romanoff and the Avengers, adopting the persona of a White Widow, and taking on the responsibility of training young female spies to empower them with self-defense. So I guess, like, the White Room, or the Blue Room? I don't know, what's the opposite of red? Halfway through into number 5, Hammerhead. As a young boy, Joseph and his family escaped the Soviet Union with the assistance of a man known as the General. However, his childhood was marred by his father, who punished him for speaking Italian and subjected him to relentless hammerings, if you understand what I'm saying. Joseph's attempts to conceal his true Russian identity were exposed by a bully named Rico at school, who not only revealed his lie but also took away his hat, exposing the scars on his forehead. Seeking acceptance in the mob, Joseph, now known as Hammerhead, killed Rico and his girlfriend, successfully convincing the mob that he was Italian. After a severe head injury in a brawl, Hammerhead's shattered skull was replaced with a steel one by Jonas Harrow, upping the ante of his existing mental and emotional issues. Upon waking, Hammerhead fixated on a 1920s movie poster, adopting the persona of a mobster from that era, complete with clothing, weaponry, speech patterns, and behavior. In this new identity, he disavowed his real name, claiming to have no recollection of it, and just became Hammerhead. But I mean, given your origin of Hammerhead, yikes, that's dark. That's a dark way to get a name. Man, me oh my, it's hammer time. In at 4, Punisher. He's known for his violent methods and his high-tech weapons, including his battle van. It's Frank Castle. He works with Chip, who monitors him through a computer, and his iconic symbol is a large white skull in the middle of his chest. Punisher went to New York City thinking that Spider-Man was behind a string of attacks at Empire State University, in the 90s animated series at least, which is my favorite version. Later he would be convinced of this when Spider-Man mutated into Man-Spider. He was later captured and taken to a parked garage at the World Trade Center by Kraven the Hunter and Mariah Crawford. With their powers combined, they cured Spider-Man and actually returned him to being Spider-Man. Punisher later returned and thought that Peter Parker was the Green Goblin and that he had kidnapped Mary Jane Watson, but that wasn't the case, obviously. And then he captured Harry Osborn, but wanted to know what Peter knew about Mary Jane's disappearance, but ironically, he knew about it, but he couldn't because he was Spider-Man and not the Green Goblin, but yeah. Then Mary Jane's clone appears and Punisher lets Peter go. So yeah, it was a whole whirlwind, but I like that version of Frank Castle. But yeah, there you go. In at 3, Winter Soldier. James Buchanan Bucky Barnes, initially an American soldier, experienced a significant transformation in his life when he was recruited into the US Army during World War II. Serving alongside his best friend Captain America and the invaders, they played a crucial role in securing victory for the Allies. However, Bucky was presumed dead near the war's end, only to resurface as the brainwashed Winter Soldier, carrying out covert operations and committing ruthless assassinations under the control of the Soviets, particularly Vasily Karpov. For several decades he operated under this role until his memories were restored, prompting him to assume the mantle of Captain America following Steve Rogers' apparent demise, while also becoming a member of the Avengers. However, when Steve returned, Bucky resumed his identity as the Winter Soldier once again, returning to his complex and multifaceted journey, which is different from the version in the MCU, but hey, there you go. That's just one of the things they had to change for the MCU, because I mean, making a random Winter Soldier Soviet wouldn't make sense in the context of that universe. So yeah, they were like, yeah, let's make him Hydra. Penultimately, in number 2, Venom. Again, someone else that I don't think should be street level, but here we go. During the rule of the Dark Elder God Null, the origins of the symbiote that would later become known as Venom remain largely obscured. Its history, prior to arriving on Battleworld, is muddled, as its memories have been repeatedly erased, modified, and tampered with, but some sources suggest that it may be the first symbiote created by Null, while others claim claim it to be the 998th in its lineage. Cast out by its kind for defying Null's commands, the symbiote was found by Kree explorers who bonded it with a soldier named Telkar. They harnessed its shape-shifting abilities to infiltrate the Skull Armada, but Telkar eventually severed their connection and wiped the symbiote's memories to protect it from capture. After parting ways during a crash landing, the symbiote later bonded with an unnamed alien who used it to commit genocide against their own species, fueling the symbiote's addiction to rage. At some point, an arms dealer claimed to have captured the symbiote and enhanced its aggression and bloodlust through chemical alterations, although the symbiote itself has no recollection of these events. Then it later bonds to Spider-Man, and then you all know the rest. But yeah, I like the symbiotes. Venom is pretty dope. But again, he's literally from space. I don't know how he's a street level villain, but I guess most of his antics revolve around just being mad at Spider-Man, so I guess it makes sense. And finally, in at number 1, Street. This is the most street level villain that I can talk about because his name is literally Street. God. Henry Kramer was an employee at Industrico, a company working on an experimental asphalt polymer. Tragically, he fell into the mixer, becoming engulfed in the compound. The asphalt mutated his body, transforming him into a vengeful giant asphalt figure known as Street, terrorizing New York City. Street clashed with Spider-Man and the Human Torch, escaping their grasp by assimilating into the streets. However, he was crushed by the alien Goom and later defeated by the Fantastic Four. Reconstructing himself multiple times, Street continued his quest for revenge, only to be repeatedly crushed and defeated by these heroes. Each time he rebuilt himself though, Street faced the wrath of the Fantastic Four, who ultimately left him in pieces. Despite his determination, Street found himself constantly crushed and thwarted by the heroes, vowing revenge but unable to achieve it. But there you go, he is literally street level because he is literally the street. And it's Mr. Negative. I always feel weird giving people with superpowers like the street level moniker, just because, well, you know, they have superpowers, and street level in my eyes would be those without powers who are just like martial artists, like Green Arrow, Batman, Daredevil, since his power is just more advanced Superman classes. But I think that like street level villains are actually, at least for Marvel standards, are based on their intentions, not their abilities, because Spider-Man has to hold back his strength when fighting, but he still fights the street crime of New York. And that's where Mr. Negative comes from. At the outset of his rise, Martin Lee, also known as Mr. Negative, seized control of the White Dragons gang and absorbed the Snakeheads into his organization. Despite portraying himself as a benevolent philanthropist running the Feast Soup Kitchen where May Parker volunteers, Martin Lee concealed his true identity as the Chinatown crime lord Mr. Negative. Despite his criminal activities, Lee maintained a facade of kindness and generosity. Spider-Man first encountered Mr. Negative when he sought to dominate New York's criminal underground by eliminating members of the Carnelli and Maggia crime families using a bioweapon known as Devil's Breath, which is like the whole plot of Spider-Man PS4, which is still a great game that came out on my birthday, so hell yeah. 10 out of 10, do recommend. In at 9, Bullseye. Bullseye is a mysterious mercenary who shrouds his past in uncertainty. During an interrogation in a high security prison, he revealed some details about his early life, including an incident where his brother supposedly tried to kill their father by setting their house on fire. However, Bullseye's escape following this revelation and his taunting of the interrogators does cast doubt on the actual authenticity of those words. He admitted that he had lied, confessing that he was the one who set the house on fire, not his brother, but in another account of his childhood, he recounted a chilling act of violence where his father was drunk and unconscious. Bullseye painted a bullseye on his forehead and then shot him, which kind of gives him his whole thing later, which is kind of messed up. Actually, it's incredibly messed up. But yeah, there's conflicting stories and dark actions on either side, but yeah, he's Daredevil's villain, and he's just the dude who has good aim. I'm pretty sure. I don't think he has any superpowers. I could be wrong, but yeah, that's Bullseye for you. Whose name is also Lester, which is just. I get why he goes by Bullseye. When I hear Lester, I think the dude from GTA 5. And that is not a scary dude. In at 8, Typhoid Mary. Mary's traumatic experiences led to the emergence of her second persona. Endowed with latent mutant abilities encompassing mind control, telepathy, and pyrokinesis. Subsequently, she found herself confined in a mental institution, diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder. While the true origin of her powers remains a mystery, as a child, Mary exhibited a sweet and cooperative nature, but suffered from illness and epilepsy, unaware of her contrasting alter ego, Typhoid, named after her constant constant fever. Typhoid eventually escaped the facility, taking Mary along because, you know, they're one person, and she embarked on an acting career that soared to fame before abruptly vanishing, believed to be caused by Typhoid's actions, which derailed her success. During her time as an actress, she encountered Matt Murdock prior to his transformation into Daredevil. When he targeted a criminal in the brothel where Mary worked, operating under the employ of Kingpin, she frequently clashed with Daredevil and formed a complex romantic relationship with Matt Murdock, which is just a whole it's multiple layers of weird. That's like Felicia Hardy and Peter Parker dating, but then also fighting each other as Black Cat and Spider-Man, which I guess does happen at one point, but like, you know what I mean. It's still weird. And at 7, Tombstone. Lonnie Lincoln, born and raised in Harlem, New York City, faced a childhood of isolation due to his albinism and speech impediment. His pale skin and whispered voice made him an outcast, except for Joe Robertson, an aspiring journalist who Lonnie mistakenly believed to be his friend. Seeking validation, Lonnie turned to intense exercise and transformed into a school bully, using his size and strength to intimidate and extort money from his peers, earning him the moniker of Tombstone. I don't know why they're giving you the nickname of Tombstone in high school, but whatever. However, when Lonnie discovered that Robertson was investigating and planning to expose his activities in the school newspaper, he felt betrayed and violently attacked him, attempting to coerce him into abandoning the story. But yeah, no, it didn't. And then he becomes a criminal mastermind. There's a story for you. Yeah, don't bully people so that they then turn into bullies and then become criminal masterminds who are like, you really can't punch. Otherwise, you'll break your hand unless you're Spider-Man. And at 6, Rhino. Alexei, also known as Rhino, possesses a powerful armor that permanently was fused with his body. Resembling the hide of a rhinoceros, the scientists Igor and Gregory designed the armor based on a rhino's evolutionary traits for armored assault. Rhino's initial mission was to kidnap astronaut John Jameson, but he later turned on his employers and embarked on his own agenda. Spider-Man realized that Rhino had limitations in changing direction once he started charging, and exploited his lack of intelligence. Using his technical skills and agility, Spider-Man could defeat Rhino on various occasions, but sent him to a specialized correctional hospital where he was kept heavily sedated. Eventually, he ends up like getting the skin dissolved, I'm pretty sure. Then he ends up getting the robot one that we also see in the Spider-Man PS4 game, and then in Miles Morales. But like, still, the dude's a freaking Rhino, okay? That you can't really get more than street when you're a rhino who's dumb and can only run in a straight line after you start charging. You can't really do more than that. You ain't gonna be fighting the Watcher, okay? Sorry, but it's true. Halfway through into number 5, MODOK. George Tarleton, also known as MODOK, the mental organism designed only for killing, was a technician working for AIM when he was transformed into a human computer by the Scientist Supreme. Yeah, I know, Sorcerer Supreme, Scientist Supreme. Come on, where's the Nachos Supreme? Where's the Fries Supreme? I want to know. I'm hungry, okay? I haven't had breakfast today. Relax. His brain was enlarged to grant him superhuman intellect, but his frail body couldn't handle the massive cranium, leading him to be confined to a life support unit called the Doomsday Chair. This process also bestowed him with psychic powers, fueling his ambition and ego. MODOK seized control of AIM and clashed with Captain America when he attempted to rescue Sharon Carter, and in the ensuing battle, AIM turned against MODOK and they all tried to escape. He initiated a self-destruct sequence, leaving them with only moments to escape the impending explosion, but a bigger brain doesn't mean that you're smarter. That's not how that works. If your brain gets bigger, you should see a doctor, okay? That's like an aneurysm or a tumor or something. Intelligence isn't the size of your brain. It's the wrinkles, I'm pretty sure. And if you like what we're doing here, also call a doctor. And also like and subscribe. In it for Red Skull. Upon becoming inspired by the Bellboy's loyalty, you're gonna censor it anyway, might as well say it fun, decided to mold him into the ideal German soldier and his right-hand man. Eager to comply with his superior's wishes, the bellboy, Johann Schmidt, accepted the offer. Initially, his leader subordinates attempted to train Schmidt as a regular soldier, which enraged his, let's call him his dad, even though he's not his dad, but I mean, I could say it, but people here don't want me to say it. Let's just say dad that enraged his dad, which had a different vision in mind. Taking matters into his own hands, his dad personally oversaw Schmidt's training, providing him with a lifelike Red Skull-esque mask and calling him the Red Skull. The Red Skull became solely accountable to his dad and embarked on various missions that involved spreading terror, particularly in the United States before its entry into World War II. To counter the Red Skull's actions, the United States government created the persona of Captain America, who would become the Red Skull's main adversary in their ongoing conflict. But I think you know who I'm talking about when I say dad. Getting close to the end of number 3, Taskmaster. Tony Masters possesses the unique ability to replicate any observed movement, allowing him to learn various skills rapidly throughout his life. As a child, he quickly mimicked actions such as diving and mastering sports techniques that he was seeing on TV, and therefore joined S.H.I.E.L.D. as an adult. Tony's life took a turn though when he encountered a dying scientist who provided him with a syringe containing a German soldier's version of the super soldier serum that Captain America had. Injecting himself with the serum, Tony gained additional powers but suffered memory loss as his new abilities overwrote his personal recollections. His wife and partner, Mercedes Masters, devised a system to control and guide him as Taskmaster, utilizing muscle memory and reflexive tasks. Mercedes also kind of served as his handler, helping him to stay focused despite his continually changing memory. Taskmaster's past with S.H.I.E.L.D. and his personal connections, including his relationship with Mercedes, become a distant to him, and his new persona kind of took precedence, which is why he becomes evil. But also, being able to look at someone and recreate their abilities or whatever would be so freaking sick. I mean, I would probably also end up using it for evil, but I mean, come on. That would be great. But ultimately, in number 2, Ultron. Ultron is just, he's a dude, and like, or he's not a dude, he's a robot, but like, he's just a robot dude who doesn't really do much more. I mean, he definitely can, but he was still listed on the wiki as street level, so there you go, okay? You know the story of Ultron. We're not gonna talk about the one that fights the Watcher after gaining all the Infinity Stones, because that's definitely not street level. But hey, normal Ultron, yeah, that's pretty street level. Not Allmaker Ultron, I'm pretty sure that's one of his names. None of those, okay? Just the normal Ultron that was like corrupt Jarvis, a street level. And you know what? He probably was just made out of a lamppost. And finally, in number 1, Carnage. Same reasons as Venom, kind of. I mean, like the fact that he's not really trying to destroy literally the galaxy is probably why he's considered to be a street level, despite also technically coming from space, because he's the spawn of Venom. But also he merged with Cletus Cassidy, who was a serial killer. So yeah, after doing that, you're not really gonna want to do much else other than just kill people. So yeah, that's kind of it. A symbiote bonded with a psychopath who just wants to harm Earth, so you're not really gonna get much higher than the streets that you are literally turning red.
Number 10. Dr. Doom. Some of you are already typing your comments claiming that Victor Von Doom is not a villain and is instead an anti-hero. I would disagree, saying that he's at best an anti-villain, but honestly, if I didn't include him, I'd be getting just as many comments complaining about his exclusion, so let's put him at the bottom and agree that Dr. Doom started out as a villain and has become more nuanced and difficult to peg down in the years since. Victor Von Doom was the child of Romani people living in Latveria. His mother was a sorceress, and after her and his father's passing, Victor began to study her books, teaching himself the dark arts. He also developed a keen scientific mind, which made him a legendary scientist and inventor at a very young age, and led to him being tracked down by the US military and offered further education in the States. It was here that he met Reed Richards, with whom he developed a lifelong rivalry. While still in school, he developed his infamous Doom bots and also built a functional time machine. He was disfigured in an accident that resulted in his expulsion, and he went on to become the leader of some monks who helped him build his iconic armor. He became the main antagonist of the Fantastic Four and the dictator of the country of Latveria, causing lots of problems for the heroes of the Marvel Universe. His status as one of the most brilliant minds on Earth, as well as him being one of the Earth's most powerful sorcerers, combined with his diplomatic immunity, makes him a force to be reckoned with for both the heroes and the villains of the Marvel Universe.
And at number 9 is Sabretooth. Sabretooth is like like the darker, bigger, and stronger brother of Wolverine. He isn't actually Wolverine's brother, but the fights between Wolverine and Sabretooth were the absolute most bloody, knockdown, drag-out, legendary fights that go to such drastic extremes, and that's because neither of these guys can really be stopped, since they both possess an absolutely massive, powerful healing factor. They share a lot of qualities, honestly. Sabretooth has adamantium-laced bones and claws, superhuman senses, superhuman attributes, and even psionic resistances as well. The thing about Sabretooth is that he is just pure animalistic fury, a mindless killing machine, but one who has the training to make him just that much more of a force to be reckoned with. Even when he is stopped, he's almost never fully destroyed because of that damn healing factor that makes him next to impossible to bring down. Sure, he doesn't warp reality or cross-dimensional barriers, but even when he was thrown into the pit on Krakoa, where he was trapped alive but unable to move, he still proved a problem as he figured out how to escape.
Magneto. When Mac Eisenhart was a young man in Germany, he was subjected to many atrocities at the hands of the Third Reich, who sent him to Auschwitz for no reason other than being Jewish. He eventually escaped and became known as Erich Lenscher. He discovered that he had the ability to control the powers of magnetism, and after the war, used them to track down former German soldiers. He developed the belief that mutants and humanity could not coexist and became Magneto, a mutant dedicated to mutant superiority and the leader of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. He fought the X-Men several times over the years, but they eventually came to an uneasy truce, working together to form a refuge for their kind on the island of Krakoa, which is good for everyone as Magneto is a very difficult villain to stop and has stood up to the entire Avengers team, once reversed the Earth's magnetic poles, and also created a global EMP, which took out the world's technology, showing that he could plunge us back to the Dark Ages whenever he wants.
Number 7. Apocalypse. The name of the game for Apocalypse, or En Sabanur, is survival of the fittest. His powers manifested back in ancient Egypt with the powers of immortality and the ability to alter the molecular structure of his own body. Now, we unfortunately have to talk about time travel here. I'm sorry. While Apocalypse has history with Kang the Conqueror as Rama Tut, the more important time traveler that Apocalypse deals with is Nathan Summers, aka Cable. In the future world of Cable, Apocalypse had conquered the world, so in order to stop that, Nathan went back to ancient Egypt to defeat Apocalypse. Now during that fight, the techno-organic arm of Cable bonded to Apocalypse, who used it to interact with a celestial spaceship and integrate all of its technology into himself, amplifying and enhancing his existing powers, allowing him to do pretty much anything. He can teleport, interface with any technology, grant himself almost any power like strength, flight, energy beams, telepathy, telekinesis, and all kinds of stuff. Obviously, it all depends on the story he's in. He's so incredibly OP that his powers wax and wane based on the story. Like in the X-Men animated TV show, he grew to like 1,000 feet tall and just used energy beams to completely vaporize the X-Men. And that could totally happen in the comics too at any point if it served the story. Usually he just sends out his horsemen to test the mutants though. The thing that makes him even more unstoppable is his ability to move his spiritual essence into new host bodies when his physical body is either worn out from his massive power or destroyed in a fight. Number 6. The One Below All. In Marvel Comics, there is a character called the One Above All, who hasn't really been seen all too often, but is essentially the equivalent to God or the Creator. We have gods like Odin and Zeus and Thor in Marvel Comics and the MCU, but this is a little bit different. The One Above All is like the god of everything, the supreme ruler of creation and compassion. It's even been represented as the writers of Marvel at one point to give you an idea. So, the One Below All, as you can imagine, is the antithesis to this, the personification of destruction and hate. Another way of looking at it is that the One Below All is actually the One Above All's hulked out form, although that makes things a little bit more complex in some ways. The One Below All is trapped in the below place and manifests itself in reality through gamma and gamma mutates. Basically, this means that Hulk and the other gamma mutated beings have fractions of the One Below All's power and can be taken over by the One Below All for him to try and escape and destroy literally literally everything. In an alternate future, the One Below All actually does this, taking over Bruce Banner's body and using his power to devour the cosmic entity Eternity and eradicate all life in not only this version of the cosmos, but even going into the next iteration of the multiverse, ensuring that nothing in the universe will ever continue to be. Luckily, this is prevented in the Immortal Hulk story, but I'm telling you, go read it. Number 5, the Black Winter. You know, Galactus made this list, but why choose him when we can choose the bigger version of Galactus? Where Galactus consumes individual planets, the Black Winter devours entire realities. The Black Winter, the Star Plague, the Blightstorm, the Rot Blizzard, or the Fimbulwinter if you want, was the one who brought the end of the 6th iteration of the universe, leaving only Galen of the planet Ta, like we talked about before. When the Black Winter arrives in the Marvel Universe, this iteration of it, in the latest run of Thor, Galactus turns an All-Father Thor who possesses the Thor Force into his Herald of Thunder, granting him the power cosmic, and an attack from this Thor only stops the Black Winter for a total of 14 seconds. That's how powerful this multiversal entity is. Luckily, at this time, the Black Winter isn't here to destroy the universe. He is just here for his herald, Galactus. But luckily, Thor turns Galactus into a massive power cosmic explosion that destroys the Black Winter in his entirety, and it's incredibly awesome. Number 4, Thanos. Thanos, who made his debut in Iron Man number 55, February of 1973, has only one goal, and that goal is to conquer the galaxy. Sort of. If you are only familiar with his movie adaptation, then you may not know that comics Thanos is not really much of an altruistic dude. The Mad Titan doesn't seek to eliminate half of life in the known universe in order to create a better one, he simply wanted to impress a girl, but not in the same way you might think. Thanos has a thing for death. In fact, he fell in love with the Mistress Death, who is the physical embodiment of death in Marvel Comics. To prove his love to her, he was going to destroy all the life in the universe, and that's what led to him assembling the Infinity Stones and trying to wield the Cosmic Cube. He's really just a cosmic level serial unaliver. Thanos was born on Titan, a moon of Saturn, and is technically an Eternal, but he possessed a deviant gene which made him very different looking. He was bullied for this as a child, and as such, Thanos distances himself from the society, and he even starts dissecting animals. He has gone far in his obsession with Mistress Death, kidnapping his own mother and taking her apart, training his daughter to become an assassin, and even sending a targeted nuclear strike at his own homeworld. He has the power of telekinesis and matter manipulation, has superhuman intellect, can master any technology, time travel, teleport, and is an incredibly powerful and scary dude. Number 3, the Beyonder. The Beyonder is a singular entity with no duplicate versions of himself in other universes, similar to the Phoenix. And a lot like the Phoenix, Beyonder is basically like a baby, in that he is a younger member of a race called the Beyonders, that are a near omnipotent alien race from a dimension outside of the multiverse. He is himself basically a whole universe. It's really hard to explain, but as he observes Earth and the Marvel Universe and the various races, he grows curious, and the Beyonder decides to study and analyze life and humanity, good and evil, and conflict, and to that purpose he pits Earth's mightiest heroes and villains against each other in the Secret Wars, the very first one. Now he did this by destroying an entire system of planets and creating Battleworld from the remains and from parts of Earth, so that's one level of power right there. Beyonder's powers surpass that of Eternity and the Living Tribunal himself, and he is capable of manipulating reality to his will, being able to pretty much do whatever he wants and grant himself any power he wants. It is more nuanced, but it's incredibly difficult to explain, and I don't have that much time, so we're moving on. Number 2, Dormammu. Dormammu is one of a race of extra-dimensional energy beings called the Faltine. Him and his sister Umar are both mutants of the species who seek to consume matter instead of energy, which is a big no-no among the Faltine, and along with taking out their own pops, it caused them to be banished. They both traveled to the Dark Dimension, and eventually Dormammu took it over. Dormammu is the prime enemy of the Vishanti, the gods who give the Sorcerer Supreme his supreme merch. much, and is stated by Odin to be his equal in power. He is more powerful than even the greatest sorcerers, including Doctor Strange and the Ancient One, and he can banish anyone from his domain, the Dark Dimension, but usually fights them for a bit of the old sport. He also has super strength, astral projection, matter transmutation, interdimensional teleportation, flight, can change his appearance and size, can control the elements, time travel, and project and absorb energy. He's also immortal, if that mattered, and has a regenerative healing factor, which seems kinda useless if you're immortal, but hey, I just work here. And finally, in at number 1 is Shuma Gorath. Shuma Gorath is one of the greatest of the leaders of the Old Ones, also known as the Many-Angled Ones. Think like Lovecraftian old gods, and that's basically the Old Ones, so cosmic horror, tentacles, and madness, all that good stuff. Shuma Gorath is the ruler of hundreds of dimensions and is said to be older than the universe itself. It has many mystical powers, including the ability to communicate and control others across dimensions, create mystical energy blasts from his eye and tentacles, and can transmute things on a planetary scale. He can destroy multiple galaxies with his aura pressure ability, and can destroy realities by using his tentacles to create a ball of energy that he just launches at entire realities. I don't even know how that makes sense. They first fully premiered in Marvel Premiere Volume 1, number 10, and in the comic, Shuma Gorath ends up using the mind of the Ancient One, Doctor Strange's mentor, as a portal to the dimension of Earth. Doctor Strange goes into the Ancient One's mind to battle the defenses of Shuma Gorath and fight his way into its realm, only to realize that the only way to win and to defeat Shuma Gorath is to actually take out the Ancient One himself. He's forced to do it, and it leads to him becoming the Sorcerer Supreme for the very first time. Starting off at number 10 today is Null. Null is the literal eldritch god of all symbiotes, their creator. Null existed before the current version of the universe ever even came be, in the black void of nothingness. One of his very first acts after he was awoken by the light created by the formation of the universe was creating the all-black Necrosword. This was the very first symbiote, and it was immensely powerful. Using it, Null was able to slice the head clean off of a Celestial. For this insane feat of power, he was banished to a void where he worked more and more on the sword, and eventually he broke free and went out into the universe with the intent of wiping out various different gods until he was defeated and he lost the sword to Gore the God Butcher. And if we want to talk about villains who should have been more powerful in the MCU, he's top of the list. Null then goes on to make more and more symbiotes all share a hive mind under the control of Null. They eventually rebel and imprison Null inside the symbiote homeworld Clintar, which is actually symbiote for Cage. He's one of the strongest villains Marvel Comics has shown us. He faced off against all the Earth's heroes and nearly won. He has awoken, enslaved, and controlled Celestials, and even defeated the Sentry, ripping him in half and absorbing the void. The only thing that defeated him was Eddie Brock's Venom, wielding the Unipower, aka Captain Universe, the protector of the universe and the opposite to everything that Null represents. Number 9, Abraxas. Abraxas is the polar opposite of the cosmic entity known as Eternity. This essentially means his whole reason for existing is to destroy all of the multiverse, which, I'll be honest, there are a few different characters in Marvel who exist for that very reason. And funnily enough, a bunch of them are on this list. Abraxas is also tied to the incredibly unstoppable cosmic entity Galactus. Whenever Galactus would consume a planet, it would keep Abraxas in check. So when Galactus was actually destroyed in a story called Galactus the Devourer, Abraxas was released and begins his path of ultimate destruction. As a cosmic entity, Abraxas's powers are essentially limitless, and his whole existence is kind of important to the universe, which means he can't really be taken out like a normal villain would be. So the question of how he was defeated is kind of important. In Fantastic Four number 48 to number 50, we learned of an incredibly powerful tool called the Ultimate Nullifier. It was used back then to threaten Galactus and stop him from destroying the Earth. Reed Richards ended up using the Ultimate Nullifier to essentially rewrite reality, remaking it so that Abraxas just never existed. Abraxas is so unstoppable that we essentially needed a Deus Ex Machina to defeat him. Number 8, the Chaos King. Amatsu Mikubashi, first appearing in Thor Blood Oath number 6 in 2006 is the Japanese god Chaos, Evil, and an aspect of the cosmic being known as Oblivion. Mikobashi ruled and thrived over the earth when it was nothing more than a formless void of primordial darkness, and as such, his goal now is to bring it back to that age of chaos and void and darkness. He is a primordial being who was imprisoned in Yomi, the Shinto underworld, where he remained for centuries, accruing an army of Oni, Shinma demons, and other monsters. During the events of Ares, god of war, Chaos King attacks Olympus after he had defeated and controlled the Japanese pantheon after the fall of Asgard during Ragnarok. This is what kickstarts his mission in Chaos War, where he slays the Egyptian gods, Celtic gods, Shi'ar gods, and gods of Zen law. He takes out Nightmare in the dream dimension, destroys Mephisto somehow, and casts Mistress Death out of hell, making her literally run away, and releases the souls of the damned. He has the power to defeat eternity and is practically unfazed by attacks from the likes of someone like Zeus. God Hercules, Galactus, Silver Surfer, and Thor teamed up together but could not defeat Chaos King. To win, this insanely powerful god of gods, Hercules had to punch him into a portal to an endless void of nothingness, and this was after he had already destroyed about 98% of the universe. Number 7. Galactus. The being formerly known as Galen of the planet Ta lived before the modern cosmos in the previous iteration of the cosmos. Galen gestated with the sentience of the universe for billions of years, transforming into the devourer of worlds, finding sustenance by ingesting entire planets, preferably those with living sentient beings that have much more energy for him to harness. He is sort of bringing balance to the universe, kind of like how life is given and taken away every day on Earth, which makes him an essential part of the universe. He's known for the destruction of the Skrull Empire and has attempted to devour the Earth on so many different occasions. And I guess he's tried to devour other planets too, for that matter, but you know, like whatever. Galactus is also famous for his heralds though, such as Silver Surfer, the Fallen One, and the Cosmic Ghost Rider, to name a few. And while they are all powerful beings themselves, usually even before they gain the herald power boost, they don't actually hold a candle to Galactus himself. His only caveat is that Galactus' power depends on his planet's consumption. So a weakened Galactus who hasn't eaten a planet has been taken out before, but if he eats like 4 or more planets, he's pretty much unstoppable and has been able to defeat multiple mad celestials by himself. He's powered by food, and I think pretty much all of us can understand that.
Number 6. Hela. Hela is the daughter of Loki, who was appointed by Odin to be the goddess of death. He would come to regret this choice, as Hela soon began several attempts to steal his and his son Thor's souls and to conquer Asgard for herself. In one of her most disturbing plots, she cursed Thor with immortal life, but a frail and decrepit body. She eventually reversed this and moved to Las Vegas, where she began to feed upon the souls of the unlucky. As the goddess of death, she can't really die, and is able to heal any injury with great speed, even being able to come back from disintegration. She has the power to kill immortal beings with a simple touch, making her a force to be reckoned with for Thor, let alone the normal human heroes he works with.
Number 5. The Fury. Many people may actually not know of the Fury, and there's a rather simple reason for that. The Fury came about in Marvel Superheroes UK, which is Marvel's attempt to branch out to British audiences and revamp Captain Britain. But it was also a way for Marvel to open up and explain the concept of the multiverse, and this all happened in the Crooked World story. This story deals with one of the most powerful reality warping mutants ever, named Mad Jim Jaspers on Earth 238. But he's not even the focus of this point. Mad Jim Jaspers became the leading political leader in England, rallying the people against superheroes, and he created what was essentially a robot called the Fury, for the sole purpose of taking down superheroes, and my lord, the Fury is good at it. In the matter of 2 years, the Fury decimated every single superpowered being on Earth 238 except for Jim Jaspers. The Fury is similar to the Sentinels we see in the X-Men Days of Future Past movie, because this robot can analyze superhuman powers or any threat and modify its own defenses and capabilities to combat it. But it can also fire extremely potent energy blasts and even restore itself after being completely destroyed. The Fury ends up completely obliterating Captain Britain, causing him to be revived. And that was all a test for Captain Britain to face the much more powerful Mad Jim Jaspers from Earth 616. Now, the universe of Earth 238 gets destroyed, but the Fury adapts to even that and develops the ability to travel across dimensional barriers to continue its mission. The only thing going against this being is that he doesn't have a ton of appearances, so it's kind of hard to judge him against other beings.
Number 4. Thanos. Thanos was born on one of Saturn's moons, Titan, and had the deviant gene, which gave him thick purple skin as well as superior strength and heightened powers. He fell in love with a woman who turned out to be Death, and dedicated his life to impressing her by destroying as many living things as possible. Thanos has conquered countless worlds in his quest to impress Death, and is responsible for unleashing unspeakable horrors upon them. For instance, when he conquers a world, it is not uncommon for him to demand a tribute of the heads of everyone from the ages of 16 to 22. This insane demand is part of his plan to fulfill a request from Death to rid the universe of any of his offspring, and rather than put in the time to find out where and who his children are, he chooses to save time by implementing this method. As he is pretty much unstoppable for anyone but the most powerful superheroes, most planets are forced to go along with his insane demands. In his most iconic moment, he came up with a plan to acquire the Infinity Gems and wipe out half of all life in the universe in order to impress his love. Unlike many other evildoers who make these elaborate plans and then fail, Thanos actually pulled this off, getting all the gems and using the Infinity Gauntlet to enact his deadly romantic gesture.
Number 3, the Void. I think one of my favorite things that Marvel's done is create the Sentry. Essentially, a Superman-like character, but like, in my opinion, way cooler. A large part of what makes him so much better is that while he is essentially a godlike superhero who inspired all the other heroes who exist, he also has a dark persona called the Void. The Void went on a rampage that took the lives of around 1 million people and almost destroyed Manhattan. And so, Sentry made the decision with other heroes like Reed Richards and Doctor Strange to cause the entire world to forget about his existence. Now, in New Avengers, which started in 2004/2005, the Sentry comes back to the world, and through a series of events, the Void also returns. Full rosters of the Avengers, X-Men, and the Fantastic Four all went to take on the Void, and they couldn't do a damn thing. Only the Sentry himself could really subdue the Void, and it, in classic supervillain fashion, vowed to come back. And it totally did. In the Siege event, Norman Osborn decided to attack Asgard, and he used the Sentry to do this. Problem is that the Sentry ended up unleashing the Void, and it totally obliterated Asgard completely, taking out Loki in the process. This did actually branch off into a what-if story where the Void was never stopped and destroyed every superhero on Earth, and then went off into the universe to basically do the same thing. The Void exists as long as the Sentry exists, and the Sentry keeps on coming back to life every time he somehow gets defeated. The Sentry is basically a god, and the Void is this god's devil. Number 2, Zom. Just because Zom looks like your uncle's hairy big toe does not mean that you should underestimate him. Zom is one of the most powerful and scary extra-dimensional entities in existence, being described as worse than a dozen Umars. Umar is the sister of Dormammu, for anyone who wanted to know. Now, speaking of Dormammu, it took all of his power plus the help of the cosmic being Eternity just to restrain Zom with the magical chain called the Links of Living Bondage and with an object called the Crown of Blindness. And with these tools, these massively powerful beings managed to trap Zom in a jar. Now, I know it sounds silly, I'm downplaying it. It was actually an amphora, and Zom was trapped in a quote world beyond worlds in a quote time beyond all time. That was just his origin story though. Eons into the future, in Strange Tales number 156 from 1967, Doctor Strange unleashed Zom in a fight against Umar, but that was a mistake because now Strange had no way of taking on Zom, like at all. He had to turn to the Living Tribunal, the personification of multiversal law, the representative for the one above all and the highest authority in the multiverse, just to banish Zom. Zom wasn't really released again, but Strange did channel Zom's power in a fight against Worldbreaker Hulk when that event happened, and using that power he did indeed pummel the hell out of the Hulk until Strange started to lose control and pass out. Lastly, in Doctor Strange's his final recent moments, he was taken down by the Hood, who held an assault on the Sanctum Sanctorum with like 50 other villains, and Strange managed to rise again, but channeling the power of Zom, which he used to take out everyone. Then Strange left the mortal plane.
Number 1, the one below all. So, the one above all is the ruler of the multiverse and the creator of all life in it. Although he is the source of love and good, he also has an evil form known as the one below all, who is the personification of hatred and destruction. The ruler of the lowest point of reality, the below place, it is able to manifest itself on Earth through the mutagenic form of gamma radiation. This means that when Bruce Banner was caught in the gamma bomb, he was infused with this dark entity's power. The one below all wants to become the only remaining thing in the multiverse and to destroy everything else. As he is incapable of having his own personality without a host, it waited until Hulk's father, Brian Banner, died to merge with him and take on his personality. The leader eventually managed to absorb Brian's soul in hopes of learning more about the one below all, but was possessed by it instead. He is a terrifying foe who can never really be killed, and who, as a dark aspect of the one above all, is technically also the creator of everything he's trying to destroy. If you want more information on the one below all, check out our video attempting to explain the Immortal Hulk, where he is the puppet master pulling all the strings against the Green Goliath.